Chapter 723. It really was the war god. Suhi was truly excited. The true men of the grasslands all worshipped heroes. Without a doubt, the war god who could defeat the Walla's leader, Yeshen, naturally belonged to the category of heroes. In the past, they had only heard of his name. Now that they had finally seen him in person, how could they not be excited? Not to mention, the war god was now the commander of the mercenaries. He could even decide the life and death of many of them. Of course, what made Suhi even more excited was that this person actually came to her in person, and he just wanted to recruit her. At that moment, he felt that he was extremely valued. That feeling was very good and made him feel very comfortable. Haraluo was also frightened by the war god's name. But soon, his eyes shone with excitement. This was the war god, someone who even Yeshen was afraid of. If he could capture this person and give him to Yeshen, he would definitely be able to exchange for a lot of good things. At that time, wouldn't he gain both fame and fortune? His faction would also have a great opportunity to develop. He would also be regarded as a hero by the grasslands warriors. Thinking about the various benefits he could obtain, Haraluo couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. He shouted at the executioners in the tent, "What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and capture him. This is a great contribution." His voice was shouted out, and the crowd of executioners were also moved. But no one moved. Instead, they all looked at Suhi. Suhi was the commander here. They could only listen to his orders. Seeing that no one moved and instead looked at Suhi, Haraluo was unhappy. He said with a dark face, "Did you not hear what I said? Let me tell you, if you don't listen, I will hand you over to my father. At that time, even Suhi won't be able to protect you." Poor Haraluo, he still didn't know that his father had already escaped with 3,000 cavalry. He thought that no one could stop him from doing anything with his father's name. Haraluo had exposed his true face. This made Suhi very unhappy. The war god was willing to take the risk alone. This was a display of courage and wisdom, but how could it not be that he trusted himself? Although he also wanted to defeat the battle god, that would bring him both fame and fortune. However, if he wanted to defeat them, he would have to defeat them fair and square on the battlefield. He would not have to resort to petty tricks and use the other party's trust to make a move. If he did that, he would not be a hero. In fact, he would be worse than a coward. That's enough. Suddenly, Suhi roared and stopped Haraluo's shouting. He then cupped his fists and said to Yang Chendong, "So it's the battle god. Sorry for the disrespect." Yang Chendong was very satisfied with Suhi's performance. The fact that the other party didn't make a move was enough to prove that he was a straightforward and upright man. Such a person was always worthy of others' trust. He smiled and said, "It's fine. I've admired General Su's talent for a long time. How about it? You gave me the conditions to send Haraluo back. Not only did I send him back, but I also appeared here personally. Does this count as showing enough sincerity?" He took the opportunity to state his purpose. These words caused Suhi's face to turn red. If he had only wanted to test the sincerity of the mercenaries before, the other party's performance was too good. It was so good that he had nothing to say. As a man, once a promise is made, even 4 horses cannot go back on it. Suhi was moved by Yang Chendong's sincerity. He immediately cupped his fists and said, "Battle god, Suhi, am very difficult to convince others, but I truly submit to you. From now on, Suhi is willing to serve by your side. Please accept me." As he spoke, he knelt on the ground. Suhi finally lowered his head. "Ha ha ha, good, good." Yang Chendong was naturally overjoyed. He laughed and took a few steps forward. He came in front of Suhi and reached out to help him up. Then the monarch and minister looked at each other and smiled. Everything was understood without words. Suhi expressed his intention to surrender. This scared Haraluo. Instead of his overbearing attitude, he stood obediently at the side like a cat. When he noticed Yang Chendong's gaze, he even tried his best to squeeze out a smile. He didn't even think about how he wanted to kill Yang Qindong just now. Yang Qindong did not even spare him a second glance. Such a person was not worthy of his attention. Yang Qindong did not even spare him a second glance. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted Su He to join the mercenaries, this person would have died countless times. Yang Qindong could ignore Hilaruo, but Su He couldn't. With the intention of returning the favor, he first glanced at Haraluoku, then at Yang Qindong and said, "War God, this subordinate has a presumptuous request, but I don't know if I can say it." "There's no harm in saying it," Yang Qindong said very generously. "This subordinate wants to send Hilaruo away. If other Tatar cavalry are willing to follow, please don't stop them. As for the rest, this subordinate will try my best to persuade them to work for the mercenaries. Please allow it." This was equivalent to the last condition. It was also Su He's end to some things. Since he had already done so many things, there was no harm in doing one more. Yang Qindong immediately nodded and said, "Okay, I promise you." "Thank you, War God." Su He's attitude was already very respectful. After he finally made his choice, he relaxed a lot. In front of the big tent, more than 100 black-clad cavalry rode on horses. They wore black iron masks, so people couldn't see their expressions at all. However, a solemn murderous aura leaked out uncontrollably. The Tatar cavalry who wanted to watch could only watch from afar. Time passed by minute. The sixth young master still hadn't come out. Fortunately, there were no sounds of fighting coming out of the big tent. But before there was a result, all the black-clad cavalry maintained their best state. They looked like they would pull out their swords and open fire once the order was given. In fact, they didn't just pull out their swords. Therefore, the black-clad cavalry carried a Type 95 on their back. Everyone's body was full of magazines. Even the quiver was full of grenades. This was just in case. Just when the tension was so high that a random sound could lead to a chaotic battle, the curtain of the big tent was finally lifted from the inside. Yang Qindong, wearing a red cloak, strode out. Beside Yang Qindong were Beta Persei, Chiu Vi, and the others. Compared to when he went in, there was one more person beside him, Su He. It could be seen that the other party intentionally stood behind Yang Qindong, and he even showed a very respectful look. After walking out, Yang Qindong first nodded lightly to Dao Shao and the other guards to show that he was fine. Then, he turned to look at Su He and said, "You may begin." "Yes." Su He cupped his fists and answered. Then, he strode away from Yang Qindong's side and walked to a place about 10 meters away from the big tent. Then, he jumped onto a warhorse and shouted from above, "Everyone, pay attention. Gather here. This general has an important matter to announce." At this time, the Tatar camp had experienced a few battles. After sending away all the wounded and a portion of people who had chosen to surrender, there were still about 7,000 people in the camp. With so many people gathered together, the momentum was still very great. Fortunately, they were worthy of being called an elite army. Even when they gathered, they were very orderly. No one panicked. Everyone stood in an orderly manner, either close or far away. However, their eyes were all on Su He, waiting for the general's next order. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the camp was once again safe. There were already very few people who continued to walk around. Su He's shout finally rang out, and that resounding voice also reached the ears of every soldier. "I am Su He. I have already made the decision to surrender and join the mercenary army. Brothers, if you believe in me, then please join me for a brand new beginning." The crowd was silent at first, but then, there was a deafening shout. It was clear that this decision was very popular with the soldiers. Many people were already moved, but because there were still many people who had not made a choice, they could not force themselves to stand out. Thus, they endured it. Now that even the general had decided to surrender to the mercenary army, they finally had nothing to worry about. The shouts came one after another, and it took a while for them to gradually calm down. Suhi's voice continued to ring out, "Young Master Haruo has already been sent back. If anyone is willing to follow young master, I will not stop or oppose. You can leave with him. Those who do not wish to join the mercenary army can also leave with young master first. When you feel that it is safe or the time is ripe, you can leave on your own. From now on, everyone will go their separate ways. However, if one day we meet on the battlefield, we will definitely not be lenient. I hope that everyone can understand, and I also hope that those who leave will take care of themselves." He had given everyone another choice. He had spoken very gently at the beginning, but at the end, he had said such a sentence, which was full of threat. When these words entered the ears of the army, it indeed caused the faces of those who had ulterior motives to tighten. They had no choice but to think about it. If they really left, where would they go in the future? Moreover, the strength of the mercenary army was so strong. If they were to become enemies, would they be able to win? To put it simply, would they have a chance to survive? Yang Qindong heard Suhi's words and laughed in his heart. This person really did have some tricks up his sleeve. It was clearly a threat, but he used such a method to make it seem as if he was thinking for everyone. This was indeed a talent. At this point, Yang Qindong was no longer worried about the choice of the Tatar cavalry. With Suhi, this powerful general, he would definitely be satisfied with the result. In order to not create pressure for the other party and be able to do things freely, Yang Qindong left with more than 100 black-armored cavalry. Chapter 724. Not long after Yang Qindong left, Har also left the Tatar camp. Nearly 1,000 Tatar cavalrymen left with him. About 200 of them had received Lord Agar Dorj's kindness, and they were following the young master to repay his kindness. As for the rest, they did not want to join the Han army, or they were simply tired of war. Suhi kept his word and did not make things difficult for them. Instead, he allowed them to take their warhorses and weapons and leave the camp. However, if one day these people could not continue and wanted to return, they would have to start all over again. A day later, Suhi brought about 6,000 Tatar cavalrymen and joined the mercenary army. At this point, the battle had come to an end. After several bloody battles, 8,000 of the 45,000 Tatar cavalrymen were killed and nearly 20,000 were wounded. Nearly 7,000 managed to escape, and in the end, more than 10,000 were captured or surrendered. On the other hand, the mercenary army had about 2,500 people who died or were seriously injured and could not return to the army. There were still more than 2,000 lightly wounded soldiers left behind. This was a great victory for them, no matter how one looked at it. Yang Qindong did not go back on his word and allowed his 4 regiments to replenish the soldiers from the captives and surrendered soldiers. After this was done, he selected some elite soldiers from the remaining Tatar cavalrymen to form a new Tatar cavalry regiment. The regiment commander was Suhi, and the number of soldiers was the same as the Nuzan cavalry regiment, 3,000. As for the remaining soldiers, they were incorporated into the newly expanded logistics regiment to replenish the soldiers. First City. News of the battle outside continued to pour into the city. The biggest change was that one could see captured Tatar cavalrymen and injured Tatar cavalrymen being sent into the city almost every day. Every time they appeared, the people in the city would talk about it. Although the citizens of the city weren't very sure about the number of mercenaries, they knew that there were about 10,000 to less than 20,000 mercenaries. Facing 45,000 elite Tatar cavalrymen with less than 20,000 people, many people were worried at the beginning. After all, the difference in strength was too great. Even if some people had seen the mercenaries' training methods, they still did not think that it would be easy for them to win. However, just as most people were not optimistic about their chances, reports of victory were sent into the city again and again. Under intentional propaganda, the more than 10,000 people in the city were clearly aware of the situation at the front lines, as well as how much the mercenaries had obtained in each battle. Seeing that they had won one battle after another, the people in the city were encouraged. They had more confidence in the mercenaries and were more determined to live in the city. Of course, there were 2 sides to everything. Some people were happy while others were unhappy. For example, some of the grassland youths in the city who wanted to join the mercenary army. They thought that if the front line was tight, they would have a chance to quickly rise and become a member of the mercenary army. However, news of victory kept coming in, especially when a large number of captives and wounded were sent into the city and passed through the streets in front of them. They couldn't help but start to worry. With so many captives, would the mercenaries choose to conscript? Would they still have a chance to join the army and create a better future? Amidst such worries, even better news came. Agar Dorj escaped, and the Tatar army was defeated. General Suhi finally chose to surrender and joined the mercenary army. The beginning city was safe. It was safe. When this news spread to the city, many people went to the streets to celebrate. Only those ambitious young men who wanted to join the army were missing. They were afraid that they had no hope. After understanding the treatment of the mercenaries, the thing they yearned for the most was to join this army. At the same time, they could also earn a better tomorrow for themselves. After discussing, they gathered together and decided in private that when the god of war returned from the front line, they would jointly request to join the mercenary army and ask the god of war to give them an explanation and a chance. Because so many people gathered, such a matter could not be hidden from the members of the security bureau in the city. At first, they thought that something big was going to happen. However, after understanding the matter, they did not know whether to laugh or cry. In the end, they reported the matter to the director of the security bureau in the beginning city, who was also in charge of intelligence in the grassland, Feng Liang. Feng Liang was one of the old people in the security bureau. When it was first established, he was chosen by the director, Yang San, and transferred to his command. Facts also proved that Director Yang San's judgment of people was still very accurate. Feng Liang withstood strict training, and after becoming an official member, he performed well and completed several difficult jobs in succession. Finally, he became a marquis and the person in charge of the security bureau in the grassland. This time, the beginning city was newly built, so it naturally needed some elite soldiers to assist. Feng Liang came here again and was responsible for the intelligence and security work in the city. He had also spent a lot of time walking through the streets and alleys of the beginning city. He knew the situation and terrain of the city like the back of his hand. Under Feng Liang's efforts, the security bureau in the city was successfully established. Its members were scattered all over the city to ensure that no matter what happened, no one would be able to escape their eyes. This time, so many young and strong grassland men suddenly gathered together. How could they escape his eyes and ears? He hurriedly sent people to inquire about and understand the situation. In the end, he got such a result, which made him feel like he did not know what to say. Logically speaking, it was a good thing that the young man wanted to join the army. At least it proved that the army was popular. This was what many forces and armies wanted to see. However, the mercenary army paid attention to the elite route of a strong army. The sixth young master personally said that he did not ask for the number of mercenaries. He only needed them to have enough combat power. Only in this way would the treatment of soldiers be higher, and they would be more flexible and mobile in the war. As a result, the pressure on the logistical support would also be much less. The route of a strong army had proven its feasibility with facts. Since the establishment of the mercenary army, which time did they not win with fewer people? It was also because of the small number of troops that they were more flexible and mobile when they fought the war. Feng Liang, who understood this policy very well, could understand the feelings of these young and strong grassland men. He could also feel the benefits of the sixth young master's policy. For a moment, he was caught in a dilemma. Since he knew what the request of these young and strong men was, there was no need to let them meet the sixth young master. This kind of small matter could be solved by him. How about this? Choose a few representatives from these young men who want to join the army. I will meet them alone. After some consideration, Feng Liang came up with a solution. That was to use the militia to solve the problem at hand. This way, they would not need to take up the quota and resources of the mercenary army. It should be the best of both worlds. All they needed to do was to pay a certain amount of silver every month. In order to build an intelligence network, the thing that the security bureau did not lack the least was silver. This amount of silver was still something they could solve. Feng Liang made a decision. He even imitated the model of establishing the militia and reserve in Qiqian City. This solution was indeed effective. After meeting the representatives in private, the two sides reached an agreement to allow these men to enter the ranks of the militia of the first city. As long as they had the opportunity to pass the assessment, they would be able to enter the regular frontline combat forces. Before that, what they needed to do was to be responsible for the security in the beginning city. Once they found any suspicious people, they could keep an eye on them. If necessary, they could inform the army in the city and cooperate with them to suppress the enemy. After doing this, not only could they get a reasonable name for law enforcement, but more importantly, they could also get some silver every month. It was tentatively set at 2 taels of silver every month. There would be an additional reward for meritorious service. 2 taels of silver was naturally nothing in front of the regular mercenary army. However, for ordinary people, it was already an income. At this moment, both sides were very satisfied. A gathering of people that needed to trouble Yang Qindong was declared over before it happened. What was even more unexpected was that it did not take long for these grassland men, who were persuaded by Feng Liang to join the militia, to really make a great contribution. Yang Qindong, who had safely returned to the city, did not know about everything that Feng Liang had done in private. However, these things would be formed into a secret document and sent to him for review. However, no one knew whether he would value it or not. For example, Yang Qindong did not pay attention to the matter reported by Feng Liang. Instead, he focused on the eastern area of the beginning city. The scouts had sent back news that the 3 divisions of the Langfeng division were already on their way to transport the goods from Qiqian City that had just been received from Sea Town. They would be able to rush back to the beginning city in at most 2 days. The previous battle was just to establish his prestige and to stabilize his foothold. Now, it seemed that everything was going smoothly. After this battle, not only did he show his prestige, but he also strengthened the army. This also gave Yang Qindong more confidence. Whether it was to defend the city or to fight, he also had more choices. However, if one wanted to conquer a place, war was only one of the methods. Another important method was economic occupation. As long as one controlled the economy of a place, it was equivalent to controlling its artery. Only then would one's influence be more far-reaching and one would be more powerful. Among the goods transported by the 3 divisions of the Langfeng division, there were many goods that were hard currencies. This was also a good opportunity to strengthen the economic strength of the beginning city again. This was also something that Yang Qindong valued very much. Therefore, on the morning of the 3rd day, when the 3 divisions of the Langfeng division escorted more than 500 carriages and appeared outside the city, he personally went up to greet them. While thanking them for their hard work, he also listened to the work reports from Division Commander Wu Sheng and Political Commissar Chen Bo. Chapter 725. Ever since they left the first city and headed to the new Aragon city, they had openly raised the banner of the mercenary army. At the same time, they attracted the attention of the Baiming guards. Then, at the downstream of the Songhua River, outside the Jianzhou left guard, they had a big battle with the 3,000 cavalrymen of the Baiming guards and won a great victory. They had made a great contribution in this battle, and because of this, they gained the name of the mercenary army. The Baiming guards became more honest, and a logistics route that belonged to the mercenary army was opened up. On the way back from Sea Town to pick up the goods, there were no more Ming army soldiers to make things difficult for them. There were only some scouts following them from afar, inquiring about their situation. Good. Hearing that he had established his prestige with just one battle, Yang Qindong was naturally satisfied. The Ming army was mostly made up of Han people. This was his route. If he could avoid hurting them, it would be best not to hurt them. As long as the other party was honest, he did not mind creating a peaceful border for them. As for who wanted to attack the Han people, he would take care of it. Of course, if the Ming army was smart, things would naturally develop normally. If they wanted to make things difficult for the mercenaries, he would not introduce them to teach them a lesson. He would let them know who they could not afford to offend and who they could not have any ideas about. The 3 divisions of Lengfeng had returned. They escorted more than 500 carriages of various sizes and a large number of goods. Since these were things that Yang Qindong needed, Crimson City would naturally provide them with all their strength. There were food, drinks, clothes, and all kinds of things. It could be said that they had everything. Not only did they bring a lot of goods this time, it was enough to make the first city a commercial city on the grasslands. At the same time, there was also a talent who came with the army. His surname was Yu and his name was Mian. His father was the first city lord of Crimson City, Lord Yu Qian. Yu Mian had a reputation in history, and his abilities were not ordinary. It was just that Yang Qindong did not appear, and in the end, Yu Qian ended up being beheaded. As his son, it was natural that he would not have a good ending. Now, things were different. Yu Qian was under the protection of Yang Qindong, and he had even handed over the management of such an important headquarters city to him. Naturally, his son would be able to do things much more smoothly. Yu Mian's arrival was not because his father, Yu Qian, wanted him to make his presence known. In fact, Yu Mian was already participating in the management of Crimson City. As the saying goes, one does not need to rely on one's own talents. Yu Qian was an upright gentleman. As long as he believed that something was right, he would not care about the opinions of others. Since his son was capable, why couldn't he be put in an important position? Yu Mian, who already had an official position in Crimson City and had begun to participate in the management, was summoned to Origin City after being recommended. This was Yang Qindong's order. Such a large city always needed someone to manage it, especially when it was just built. It could be said that there were a lot of things to do. If the person who came was not capable, wouldn't it be a waste of his energy? Finding a suitable city lord was a problem that Yang Qindong had been thinking about. He handed the matter of the candidates to Crimson City and asked them to report it. Among them was Yu Mian's name. In the end, he became the person that Yang Qindong wanted. When he saw Yu Mian, it was at the Yang residence in Origin City. The largest residence in this city was Yang Qindong's residence. In the pavilion in the back garden, Yang Qindong met Yu Mian, who was in his early 30s. The reason why he chose this place was to show his closeness. Only those who were chosen by Yang Qindong would be able to appear in such a private occasion. On the other hand, if it was someone unfamiliar, they could only meet in the living room. Yu Mian greets the 6th young master. After being brought to the back garden by Beta Persei, Yu Mian became excited when he saw the back of Yang Qindong, who was drinking tea alone from afar. He was still far away, but he had already bowed respectfully. Come, have a seat. Yang Qindong laughed without even turning his head. Then, he waved his hand and greeted Yu Mian casually. The more casual he was with you, the more he expressed his trust in you. Yu Mian naturally walked to Yang Qindong's side with a look of fear and trepidation. Then, he nervously and carefully sat on the empty chair opposite him. One shouldn't think that Yu Mian's performance was exaggerated. But for those who lived in Crimson City, there was no one who didn't know Yang Qindong and the 6th young master. For example, Yu Qian was the first to be kidnapped, so he naturally had a conflict in his heart. Coupled with his feelings for the great Ming dynasty, it was basically impossible for him to work for other forces. Fortunately, Yang Qindong had never forced him. Otherwise, given Yu Qian's unyielding character, it would not be strange for him to commit suicide. He seemed to know what kind of person Yu Qian was, what kind of nature he had, and what kind of character he had. From the beginning, Yang Qindong did not intend to use force. He just let Yu Qian wander around the city. Then, under the influence of what he saw and heard, the environment really changed Yu Qian's mind. When he saw that Yang Qindong really wanted to change the people's lives, enrich the country and strengthen the people, and even create a dynasty that was more powerful than the great Ming dynasty, his thoughts also changed little by little. During the day, he walked on the streets and observed his surroundings. He felt the vitality in Crimson City and the sincere and brilliant smiles on the faces of the people. At night, he tossed and turned in bed, unable to fall asleep. He thought about what kind of impact the development of Crimson City would have on the Great Ming Dynasty and whether the development of such a city would be good or bad. Rather than saying that Yu Qian was loyal to the emperor of the Great Ming Dynasty, it was better to say that he was loyal to the people of the Great Ming Dynasty. By the same logic, he would help whoever could give the people a better life. After observing for many days, he confirmed that the development of Crimson City was for the good of the people. It could let them live a better life, obtain more respect, and obtain more fairness. He was surprised to find that this was not the life he wanted. The life and world he wanted. The life he had been pursuing all this time. In the end, reality defeated him and changed Yu Qian. He finally decided to use his own ability to do something for the city. Then, he was appointed to an important position and became the lord of a city. Facts also proved that he was indeed capable. Not only in military matters, but also in the people's lives. After he was given great power, his performance would only improve. Facts further proved that Yang Chendong was right to put Yu Qian in an important position. Under his guidance, Crimson City entered an era of rapid development. With Yang Chendong's help in various aspects, it quickly became the largest city in the Yang dynasty. It created countless wealth for the development of the entire Yang dynasty and laid a solid foundation. Yu Qian was contributing to the development of Crimson City. Of course, his family was duty-bound as well. At this time, Yu Mian also became an official and became a capable subordinate under his father. He was a capable assistant. His performance was also remarkable. In the end, he came to the first city and became the person personally appointed by Yang Chendong. At this time, Yu Mian sighed with emotion about his experience. He could also feel the great responsibility on his shoulders. He had even begun to outline the future development plan of the first city in his heart. He was thinking that he must build the first city into the second Crimson City and continue its glory. Compared to Yu Mian's nervousness and excitement, Yang Chendong was very calm. He did not talk about business right away. Instead, he casually asked about the matters in Crimson City, especially if the higher-ups and officials could fulfill their duties. Yu Mian, don't be nervous. Just say whatever you want to say. You also know that I'm not in Crimson City all year round, so I don't know much about it. And where there are people, there will be fights. I know this better than you. If you say that your father is the city lord, no one will object to what he says and does, then I don't believe it. With a smile on his face, Yang Chendong directly sealed off the path of retreat, as if saying, I can see that your father is an honest man, so I hope that you're also an honest man. If there's anything you want to say, then say it to me. Originally, he wanted to sing praises for Crimson City, but suddenly, after Yang Chendong said this, Yu Mian knew that he could hold back those words in his stomach. But at the same time, he was very happy that the sixth young master was so considerate of him. Such a person was worthy of others' loyalty. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he thought for a while before saying, Sixth young master, just as you said, there will be fights where there are people. The higher-ups in Crimson City are indeed not a tight group. There are some people who have doubts about my father's decisions. But all in all, this is just a difference in opinion and a desire for power. At least up to now, no one has caused any major trouble. After all, with Sixth Young Master's reputation and the Security Bureau's people secretly watching, as well as the Special Inspector Bureau's Lord Shinyu's guarantee on the surface, everything is still peaceful. Yu Mian was being careful and polite, and what he reported was all good news. However, Yang Chendong was not an ordinary person. He could still hear the hidden meaning in his words. Even if everything was peaceful now, it was unknown what would happen in the future. What's going on? Tell me the details. This time, Yang Chendong had already put away his smile, and his expression became much more serious. If he didn't do this, he was afraid that it wouldn't be enough to make Yu Mian tell the truth. It's fine. Yu Mian seemed to want to say something, but in the end, he shut his mouth. And this had already angered Yang Chendong. Then. Alright, you can rest for now. In a few days, there will be a carriage that will go to Sea Town to pick up supplies. You can go back to Crimson City with the carriage. After saying this, Yang Chendong slowly stood up. Since Yu Mian didn't want to tell him the truth, he would let him go back. There was no need for him to stay by his side if he couldn't confide in him, let alone hand over such an important city like the first city to him. Chapter 726. He actually asked him to go back. This was obviously a sign of anger. Yu Mian was frightened at this moment. When he came, many people's eyes were red with jealousy. His father had high hopes for him, hoping that he would be able to gain a foothold in the origin city and create a glory similar to the Crimson City. Even when he left, he patted his chest and almost made a military order. It could be said that his family had given him too much hope for his arrival. But now, he was actually going to return empty-handed. One could imagine what would happen if he didn't do anything and went back with his tail between his legs. At that time, not to mention himself, even his father would be implicated. Then, he would become the true sinner of the Yu family. The consequences would be unimaginable and unimaginable. Yu Mian waited for Yang Chendong to leave the pavilion. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly shouted, "Sixth young master, please wait a moment." Stopping in his tracks, Yang Chendong turned around. "What is it? Do you have something to tell me?" "Yes. Yes." This time, Yu Mian lowered his head. Regardless of whether he was willing or not, he had no choice now. "Then speak." Yang Chendong's expression was calm. "Yes, sixth young master. With the continuous development of Crimson City, there are indeed some people who have become restless and dissatisfied. The most representative of them is Yang Taizhu. This is not his real name. It is a name he changed after coming to Crimson City. His father thinks that this name is more resounding and is in line with our original intention of conquering the world with martial arts. And his father is Crimson City's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yang Shan." Since he had already spoken, there was no way out for Yu Mian. Thus, he revealed everything he knew about the situation. Yang Taizhu is a very decisive person. He also has some tricks up his sleeves. Relying on the fact that he is Minister Yang's son, he bullies the good and oppresses the good. Many people who have money and power without any background have been oppressed by him. Not only that, but he also secretly kept the new products produced by the factories in Crimson City, using the excuse that they were not up to standard for his personal use, and then sold them to foreign merchants at a cheaper price. Sixth young master, as you know, the quality of our Red Nest City's goods is excellent, and the variety of them is wonderful. The demand has always exceeded the supply, and as long as these goods are out of the sea, they can be sold for a good price on land. Because of this, the entire Yang family has become rich. Yang Taizhu used most of this money to establish connections. They used this money to bribe and rope in some officials of various levels in Crimson City, causing their network to grow larger and larger. I'm afraid that it won't be long before these people join forces. They will be able to restrict my father's orders. After saying these words, Yu Mian lowered his head. He knew that he had thrown a huge bomb today. Who knew how many people would be punished after this, and how many heads would fall to the ground because of this? Yang Chendong had been listening quietly, and there was no change in his expression. But in fact, his heart was already overflowing with anger. Everything Yang Taizhu had done, in the words of future generations, was smuggling, and this was stealing from him. Then, he used his money to bribe and collude with some officials. It could be imagined that in the long run, once the net was large enough and the energy was strong enough, the first one to be overthrown would be City Lord Yu Qian, who had faithfully carried out his orders. Perhaps it would be his turn next. To think that he was still fighting a bloody battle on the front lines, risking his life in order to seize more territory as quickly as possible, liberate more people, and accumulate more power and influence. But if the rear was unstable, wouldn't everything he was doing now be a wedding dress for others? If that was the case, he would instead become a puppet. Just the thought of it was laughable. Of course, Yang Chendong wouldn't believe Yu Mian's words. Who knew if Yu Mian, who appeared to be honest and considerate, spoke in such a way because he wanted to eliminate his dissidents? Besides, Crimson City was his base camp. There were too many of his trusted aides there. Would those people turn a blind eye to such a thing? With doubts in his heart, Yang Chendong returned to the pavilion and sat down. Tell me. Yang Taizhu is so lawless. Does no one from the Security Bureau care about him? Could it be that the Special Inspector Bureau is useless? And those people from the military, will they turn a blind eye to it? It was precisely because he had left behind these forces and manpower that Yang Chendong was extremely at ease with Crimson City. He didn't believe that some people and some things could be bribed with money. Couldn't they tell that once he was angered, it would be useless no matter how much money they took out? Yu Mian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked up at Yang Chendong with a troubled expression. Say what you have to say. Don't hesitate. Beta Persei, call Tiger's mane over. Yang Chendong stared intently at Yu Mian's face as he roared outside. Beta Persei left in a hurry, at a loss. Yang Chendong looked at Yu Mian and said, "All right, there are no outsiders here now. Tell me everything you know. Even if you say something wrong, I won't blame you. Furthermore, the matter of you saying something wrong won't spread." Now that things had come to this, Yu Mian had no way out. At that moment, he seemed to have made a decision as he said, "Yes, sixth young master. This is the situation. This young Taizhu is very capable. He first wooed one of Fifth Madam's personal maidservants, Lin Lin, and married her. This way, he would have Fifth Madam's support. Then, he joined forces with the director of Crimson City Security Bureau, Chen Shuquan. The sixth young master definitely knows this person. This person doesn't speak much, but as his name suggests, he likes power very much. It can be said that he hit it off with Yang Taizhu. With the support of the Security Bureau, he naturally gets twice the result with half the effort. As for the Special Inspector Bureau, he definitely won't find trouble with Fifth Madam. My father once doubted it, but soon, Lin Lin personally appeared in the city lord's office. After that, I heard from my father that Lin Lin said that the entire Crimson City belongs to the Yang family. The Yang family's madam only took some money from her family. Is there a need to inform outsiders and use outsiders to criticize her? There's no need to talk about the military. Now that there's a political department, Ling Song and Commander Gao Xiong are thinking of how to compete with them. How could he possibly intervene in the local affairs? Wouldn't that be handing over his weakness to others? Therefore, they simply turn a blind eye. As for the other officials, they don't dare to interfere. With the idea that mortals suffer when immortals fight, they hide as much as they can. As long as these people don't provoke them, they will also turn a blind eye. Upon hearing Yu Mian's explanation, Yang Chendong widened his eyes. No one dares to interfere. Didn't the Luan family do anything? Luan Xiaoyu is my future sixth madam. Didn't she stand up? It could be heard that although this was a questioning voice, there was a hint of trembling in his voice. It was unknown if it was because of anger or disappointment. Sixth madam? Ever since you left Crimson City, Sixth Madam led the publicity team to perform for the nearly 5 million Han people. She said that she wanted to change the views and mentality of these people as soon as possible, so she hasn't been in Crimson City. And these things have only happened in the past few months. Sixth Madam doesn't know about it. Yu Mian knew that this was very likely related to a girl's future happiness and the future of a large family. Of course, he had to explain it clearly. Upon hearing this, Yang Chendong's expression looked better. But soon, he sneered. The Yang family's money is indeed used by the family. There's no need for outsiders to interfere, but the problem is that she's just a maidservant. What right does she have to represent Fifth Madam? For this matter, did Fifth Madam really show up? Yu Mian thought for a while and shook his head. Probably not. At least, Fifth Madam didn't say anything to my father. Humph. Then this Lin Lin acted on her own accord. But Fifth Madam didn't use people to investigate. She is also responsible. Yang Chendong said. This was equivalent to settling the matter. He really didn't expect that such a thing would happen in Crimson City. If not for the fact that he happened to talk to Yu Mian today and discovered some clues, he was afraid that this matter would only get bigger and bigger, and one day, it would become an unsolvable problem. It seems that some people are used to living a peaceful life. They have forgotten what it's like to lick blood on the blade. If that's the case, then don't blame me for being heartless. After speaking, Yang Chendong raised his hand and slammed down on the stone table in the pavilion. Boom! A thunderous sound suddenly rose. After Yang Chendong's anger soared to the sky and he used his qi, the stone table actually cracked and fell to the ground with a loud bang. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei, who had just entered the courtyard, saw this scene clearly. Young master. Both of them cried out in surprise and then ran over in big strides. After all, Yang Chendong was still made of flesh and blood. When he slammed down, his hand was bleeding. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei cried out in pain and shock. They hurriedly shouted outside and arranged for the military doctor to bandage the wound. At the same time, both of them looked at Yu Mian angrily. Don't blame Yu Mian. It has nothing to do with him. Since you're here, listen to what Yu Mian has to say. Tell me your thoughts later. Yang Chendong's voice was very calm. He then waved his hand and went to find the military doctor, including his wound. Yang Chendong didn't doubt Yu Mian's words because some things could be found out after an investigation. If he was lying, then even his father, Yu Qian, couldn't protect him for framing Fifth Madam. After leaving the courtyard and finding the military doctor, Yang Chendong returned to the backyard after bandaging his hand. He saw Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei standing there with flushed faces. Beside them was Yu Mian, who was trembling with fear. He lowered his head and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Chapter 727. Are you trying to scare Yu Mian? Let me tell you, this has nothing to do with him. He is the hero. Needless to say, Yang Chendong knew that the two of them must have gotten angry in front of Yu Mian. Otherwise, they wouldn't be like this. This subordinate doesn't dare. Yu Mian did see Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei getting angry just now. It was as if they wanted to eat someone, which really gave him a fright. Alright, Yu Mian, you don't have to be afraid. You have contributed to this matter. How about this, you go take a walk on the streets first and familiarize yourself with the situation in the beginning city. Then, write a city management report for me to read. We'll talk about the construction of the beginning city when the time comes. You can go now. With a smile on his face, Yang Chendong said to Yu Mian with a pleasant expression. Yu Mian naturally nodded and agreed. He excused himself and resigned. After there was no one else around, Yang Chendong's expression turned cold again. Tell me, what do the two of you think? Kill. Kill all these sinners. Yes, not only do we have to kill them all, but we also have to hold a public trial to clarify their crimes. We have to let all the officials in the Crimson City know what the consequences of doing wrong are. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei expressed their opinions one after another. After listening to Yu Mian explain everything from the beginning to the end, they were really angry. They didn't expect that while they were fighting for their lives in front of them, the people behind them would be like this. They even felt that their efforts were not worth it. Yes, some people have to be killed. The public trial also has to be held, but the evidence still has to be found first. Crimson City can't be in chaos because of this. It has to develop normally and healthily. Yang Chendong also said as if he had made a decision. Although Yang Xia was developing rapidly now, in fact, everything was based on Crimson City. For example, the two provinces of Vietnam and Laos, the development of the beginning city, the expansion of the army, and the improvement of combat power all required a lot of money as a foundation. With money, it was naturally easier to do things. Without money, it was not an exaggeration to say that it was difficult to do anything. For the development of Crimson City, Yang Chendong put in a lot of effort. Not only did he share the fruits of his labor, but he also increased the salaries of the officials to ensure that they could work without any worries. But now it seemed the human heart could never be satisfied. He originally thought that everyone would be fine, but since there were still problems, he had no choice but to change his strategy. And this was the result of these people asking for it. It seems that I have to rectify my work style. Check it out and immediately send a message to Yang San. Directly ask him what he does as the chief of security and whether he still wants to work. If he doesn't want to work anymore, arrange for him to go to Crimson City to farm. Don't say that I didn't take care of him. Give him 50 mu of land, which is enough for his family to retire now and in the future. Then send a message to Yang Wu, scold him and ask him to cooperate with Yang San's next work. Send a message to the first madam, ask her to lecture the fifth madam, tell her that when I'm not around, she has to take care of the maids under her. Send a message to Shinyu, scold him, as a person in his position, he has to do his job. If he can't do it, then he should just resign. Send a message to Wan Xiaoyu, with her as the leader, let them carry out a rectification operation, including the military. Yang Qindong issued a series of orders. Tiger's mane and Beta Persei's expressions also became extremely solemn. They knew that this time, the sixth young master was really angry. He was so angry that he wanted to reshuffle the cards in Crimson City. The orders were issued one by one. The two of them were afraid of forgetting something, so they had already taken out a pen and paper and began to write it down. Not long after, the two of them turned around and went straight to the telegraph room. It could be imagined that there would be a lot of work to be done. After arranging everything, Yang Qindong became relaxed. He walked towards the military supplies that were delivered. This time, there were a lot of commercial goods. He wanted to carry out commercial activities in the first city, so he also wanted to build a commercial street here. Reality told him that he couldn't put all his eggs in one basket. He still had to make multiple preparations. It would be best if the city below could be self-sufficient. In this way, even if there was a problem in one of the links, it would not affect the overall situation. In the following time, Yang Qindong found Yu Mian. The two of them began to walk through the streets and alleys to plan the future construction of the first city. At this time, several fast boats were heading towards Crimson City from the sea. In the cabin, Yang San, who had a fierce face, was among them. Ever since he received the telegram, he rushed to the nearby dock from the Great Ming Dynasty. Along the way, he had a gloomy face. The fast boat that belonged to the Security Bureau had already been arranged. After he boarded the boat, he went straight to Crimson City. The telegram was in Yang San's hands. He had already read it countless times. However, every time he read it, his heart would ache. Especially when he saw that he was given 50 mu of land to retire in, he felt a burst of shame. With his indestructible brotherly relationship with Tiger's mane and Beta Persei, he sent several telegrams back and finally figured out what had happened. He also finally knew why the sixth young master was so angry. Chen Shuquan, you've caused me a lot of trouble. Next, you'll never be able to make a comeback. Sitting in the cabin, Yang San said fiercely in his heart. The work of the Security Bureau had always been very effective. Because of this, he had received countless praises from the sixth young master. After a long time, he was a little numb. He even had the idea that the work of the Security Bureau was very easy to do. No matter who was arranged to take up the post, there shouldn't be any problems. Yang San was careless, or rather, he was blinded by victory. He really didn't think about it. The Security Bureau's achievements today were naturally inseparable from their efforts. However, the more important reason was that Yang Qindong had invested a lot of money in this. The money that the Security Bureau spent in a year alone was more than the annual national taxes of Bai Ming or Southern Ming. This was still referring to the current situation. The territory wasn't that big, and there weren't many areas that needed to be controlled. As it continued to develop, this money would only be spent more and more. It was precisely with this money as a guarantee that the Security Bureau could get more information and information. It was hateful that Yang San hadn't paid attention to this before, so when he used people again, he didn't pay so much attention to the inspection. For example, Chen Shuquan was also one of the old people when the Security Bureau was first established. His actual ability was very ordinary. It was precisely because he had to be taken care of that he was arranged to be a director in Crimson City. After all, the situation there was the best. As long as he didn't take the initiative to look for trouble, not only was the work easy, it was also easy to achieve results. Yes, the results were out now. Even the sixth young master was alarmed, and he was even scolded because of it. Just based on this, he couldn't tolerate it. Yang San would definitely not show mercy to this kind of person who spoiled the pot of soup with a piece of **tea. After such a big incident, Yang San was almost sent home to be a farmer. If this matter couldn't be resolved, he was afraid that this time, he really wouldn't be able to report back. Has the Security Bureau's operation team set off? Yang San thought about some of the things that he needed to do when he arrived at Crimson City and thought that he needed reliable people. He looked at Che Chao and asked. Che Chao was a supervisor under the Security Bureau. He was very capable, but because he was still too young and wasn't in the first batch to enter the Security Bureau, he didn't have enough qualifications. Therefore, he had been staying by Yang San's side to gain experience. This time, he brought Che Chao over to solve Chen Shuchuan's problem better and faster. At the same time, he also wanted to take the opportunity to see if this person had the ability to succeed Yang Shuchuan's position, and if there were any problems with his character. After Chen Shuchuan's incident, Yang San started to pay attention to the character of his subordinates. Reality had already proven that if a person was unreliable, the stronger their ability, the more likely they would become a black sheep. Yang San would definitely not make the same mistake twice. Chief, the operation team has transferred 200 people over. They are all safe and reliable, and they don't have any contact with each other. This time, they were ordered to rush to Crimson City from various places and won't leak any information. It's just that when they enter Crimson City's pier, it might be a little troublesome. The person who spoke was Che Chao. He had delicate features and looked very young. Don't worry, when the time comes, you will stay at the pier and be in charge of receiving them. I will give you my token. Yang San said without the slightest emotion in his eyes. This was also the appearance he often maintained in front of his subordinates. Perhaps only in this way, people couldn't see his true thoughts. With Yang San's token, entering the strictly guarded Crimson City's pier would naturally be incomparably smooth. Che Chao quickly agreed and then shut his mouth. Until now, he still didn't know why he suddenly returned to Crimson City, but his intuition told him that there must be some secret mission because if there was a shortage of manpower, there was a Security Bureau branch in Crimson City, and there were quite a number of people there. However, not informing them seemed to indicate a lot of problems. After Yang San asked these questions, he fell back into a state of meditation. He was already planning his every move after entering Crimson City. This time, he didn't want to rely on others. He wanted to personally investigate Chen Shuchuan's problem. If everything was like what the sixth young master said in the telegram, he would solve it according to the family law and cut off this malignant tumor of the Security Bureau with his own hands. Crimson City. It was still incomparably bustling. Even when the sky was dark, the main streets were already brightly lit. In the Great Ming Dynasty, kerosene lamps were still used, and the palace ministers only used candles. Just this point alone was many times better than before. As the citizens of Crimson City, they were also the first to enjoy the benefits of modern electrical industry. Meanwhile, in a courtyard that was known as the Street of Light, some people were doing shady things. Chapter 728. In a secret room, there were only 2 people sitting inside. There was tea and some snacks on the table. Brother Chen, this time Yu Mian went over there. Who knows what he might say? I have to say that you're still too careful. If you did as I said, you should just kill him. Wouldn't that solve the problem once and for all? A slender, handsome man with extremely thin lips took the lead to speak up. This person was Yang Taizhu. With a father like Yang Shan and a good appearance, he was blessed by the heavens. It could be said that the heavens treated him well. As long as he behaved himself, he was destined to have a good life. Unfortunately, his ambition was too big, so big that it was beyond his ability. It was only a matter of time before he was destroyed. Sitting opposite Yang Taizhu was an ordinary-looking man. Even if such a person walked on the street, he wouldn't attract anyone's attention because he looked too ordinary. His height was ordinary, his facial features were ordinary, and there was nothing special about him. Such a person was suitable for an organization like the Security Bureau. No matter what, he didn't stand out. He was Chen Shuquan, the director of the Security Bureau in Crimson City. No. Chen Shuquan spoke, Yu Mian absolutely can't be killed. Not to mention that his father is Yu Qian. If something happens to him, it's impossible that no one will come to investigate. When the higher-ups call for this person, if we do this, wouldn't that be exposing ourselves? Yang Taizhu also knew that killing Yu Mian at this time was a little too far-fetched, but for some reason, he had a faint worry in his heart. Ordinary people didn't dare to casually talk about him, but this person had a father who was more powerful than him. Once he saw that person, he really couldn't predict what he would say. Sigh, it's too late to say anything now. I hope he'll be honest and not talk nonsense. Although Yang Taizhu was saying words of comfort, his face was still nervous. Chen Shuchuan's ordinary face chuckled and said, Brother Yang, you don't have to be too worried. Yu Mian isn't that stupid. Saying anything about us won't do him any good. Besides, he has no evidence of our crimes in his hands. Besides, although he has gone to the north, it is still unknown whether he will be able to see that person, or whether he will have the opportunity to meet him alone. Even if he dares to say anything, our Security Bureau will be the first to receive the news. At least until now, I haven't received any orders. You don't have to worry. Yes. With Brother Chen here, I am naturally not worried. Yang Taizhu chuckled. Then, as if he had thought of something, he asked, By the way, Brother Chen, do you think the Security Bureau will secretly arrange for other people to come to Crimson City? I don't think so, Chen Shuquan said confidently. The director has a good relationship with me. He won't suspect me easily. If he really has any thoughts, he should ask me first. Even if he sends someone to investigate, he should inform me. Even if you don't inform me, my men are watching the docks day and night. It will be as difficult as ascending to the heavens for anyone who wants to get to the docks without being noticed. Chen Shuquan was indeed very confident. He was equally confident in his relationship with Yang San. Logically speaking, he was right. If it was just an ordinary person who complained, Yang San would really inform him beforehand. After all, suspecting a subordinate for no reason would only make the other brothers bitterly disappointed. But he forgot one thing. It depended on who was the one who complained. What if it was Yang Chendong who gave the order? Then it wouldn't be a complaint, but 100% execution of the order. If Yang Chendong gave the order, Yang San would definitely attract great attention. Not only that, but he would also have to do a good job. Even if there was no problem, he must provide evidence. Under such circumstances, how could Yang San inform Chen Shuquan about it? At this moment, it could only be said that Chen Shuquan was too confident, so confident that he was a little arrogant. It was a pity that no matter if it was Chen Shuquan or Yang Taizhu, they didn't think too much about it. They only thought that even though Yang Chendong was formidable, to the extent of having an incomparable status in the entire Yang faction, in all of Crimson City, a person was a person, he wasn't a god, how could he possibly care about everything? Furthermore, they didn't do anything to betray Yang Xie. They were just using their power and status to earn more money. Was there anything wrong with that? Which dynasty, which family didn't use this opportunity to develop? What they did wasn't a big deal, so it wouldn't attract Yang Chendong's attention. Yu Mian's matter seemed to have come to an end here. Following that, the two of them talked about the Luan family. The Luan family was a special existence in the entire Crimson City. The Yang family only had a total of 4 people, but these 4 people all held high positions and held different positions and influence in different industries. Especially their daughter, Luan Xiaoyu. When she reached the age, she would become the 6th madam. How could such a family not be illustrious? In Crimson City, anyone with ambition would have the idea of getting close to the other party. Because once they obtained the friendship of the other party, no matter what they did in the future, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Yang Taizhu had been thinking about this recently. Considering the current situation of the Luan family, he was powerless against Luan Qi and Luan Qi's mother, Zhou Hua. These two had power and status, and were busy with work every day. Outsiders simply didn't have the time to come into contact with them. As for his daughter, Luan Xiaoyu, her identity meant that no one would dare to have any ideas about her. Even Yang Taizhu couldn't, and even his father, Yang Shan, didn't dare to touch her. After thinking about it, there was only one Luan Shaochen. This person was placed in an important position and had already become the governor of Lao province at a young age. His future was limitless. Most importantly, he had a fatal flaw, and that was that he was young, and he still didn't have a wife. Although Luan Shaochen had already married 2 concubines in order to appease the hearts of the nobles in Lao Lao, and also in order to give birth to the Luan family, he didn't have a wife. In the eyes of others, that was the high and mighty position, and only then was he recognized by the outside world as a member of the Luan family. Currently, Yang Taizhu and Chen Shuquan were discussing the matter of finding a wife for Luan Xiaoyu. They had already thought about it. As long as this wife was one of their own, then if anything critical happened in the future, this person would play an absolutely crucial role. This was equivalent to not only establishing a relationship with the 5th madam, but also joining forces with the 6th madam's family. At that time, as long as the 2 pillow winds blew, and the one above loosened her mouth, even if there was a huge matter, it could be suppressed. We have to hurry up with the matter of finding someone. He's not young anymore, and finding a wife is only a matter of time. If it wasn't for that statement that the wife of a high-ranking official must be a Han, I'm afraid that there would already be arrangements and we wouldn't have a chance. Yang Taizhu thought about this matter and reminded Che Chao, who was sitting opposite him. Brother Yang, don't worry, I have already arranged for the security bureau to search the city. It's just that your requirements are a bit too high. You need to be young and beautiful, and you also need to have a clean background. The most important thing is that you listen to us. This kind of search is somewhat contradictory, so it dragged on for a few days. While Che Chao was complaining, Ang Tieju's eyes were already wide open. The person must be beautiful, otherwise Luan Shaochen might not be able to take a fancy to her. Her background must also be clean. Do you think that when the Luan family is looking for a wife, they won't let people investigate? As for listening to us, this is even more important. We won't be kind enough to make a wedding dress for others. The person we find must be helpful to us. Yang Taizhu didn't relent, and Chen Shuquan could only sigh and nod. Okay, I'll continue to arrange for people to search. By the way, the latest batch of goods should be out of the cabin. When will you give me a definite letter? I'll start to arrange it. Well, it'll be soon. It'll be in 3 days at the new dock. I've already arranged everything that needs to be arranged. When the time comes, all you need to do is to send people from the security bureau to temporarily seal off the dock for 4 hours. Then, everything will be ready. Chen Shuquan nodded when he heard this. That's easy, it's not the first time we've done such a thing. Ha ha ha. The two looked at each other at this moment and smiled. The so-called status and power were all transient, only the gold and silver in their hands were real. As long as they had money, where couldn't they be happy and carefree? The two were still secretly plotting here, and from time to time, their laughter could be heard, which was a kind of imagination for the future. But what they didn't know was that while they were talking, the director of the security bureau, Ong San, had already arrived at the new dock on a fast boat without anyone noticing. He was stopped by the security bureau of the Crimson City, who were guarding here day and night. After Yang San led Che Chao and dozens of people off the fast boat, he took out the pass issued by the security bureau, and Ling Feng, who was guarding the dock, allowed them to pass according to the regulations. But soon, 4 secret agents of the security bureau surrounded them. Wait, you said that you have a pass from the security bureau, but why haven't we heard about this? Take it out and let us have a look. 4 men dressed like commoners walked over. Then, they looked at Yang San's group of dozens of people with arrogant looks on their faces. Who do you think you are? Che Chao stepped forward. For a small fry like this, there was no need for the director to come out personally. The people of the security bureau were used to doing whatever they wanted. Suddenly, they saw someone who was more arrogant than them. The four of them looked at each other, then laughed. Yo, I didn't know that you're so brave. Do you know who we are? Let me tell you, have you heard of the security bureau? You actually want to enter the city under our banner, then you have to go through us first. Chapter 729. The leader had a smug look on his face. In fact, he was also one of Director Yang Shuchuan's most valued subordinates, Dong Hui. Usually, he was in charge of the entry and exit of the docks. When he said this, he intentionally glanced at Ling Feng, who was on duty. He was basically telling Che Chao and the others that if they didn't want to be captured by Ling Feng, they had to be more obedient. Usually, he would scare others, but this time, he was intimidated by Dong Hui's words. Che Chao smiled but didn't reply. He only turned his head to look at Director Yang San, obviously asking for instructions. Don't make a big deal out of it. Take them down first. Yang San's position meant that he was incomparably decisive when it came to doing things. He really wasn't in the mood to explain anything to a few small fries. As soon as Yang San spoke, the people around him immediately moved. They moved like lightning and restrained 3 of them. Only Dong Hui's skills were not bad. He actually dodged them. After jumping 3 meters away, he suddenly shouted at Ling Feng, who was on duty, "Come quickly, there's a spy here." As soon as he shouted, the Ling Feng over there moved. As elites, they had long been paying attention to what was happening here. The appearance of Yang San's group was already very eye-catching. It was difficult for dozens of men not to attract attention wherever they went. However, they had the security bureau's credentials. They belonged to 2 different departments, so they had no choice but to let them go. When they saw Dong Hui, who was also from the security bureau, stop them, they thought that it was indeed an internal matter of the security bureau, so they didn't care. However, Dong Hui's sudden shout made them feel that something was wrong, so they swarmed over. The entire squad of Ling Feng only had a few seconds to pull out their guns, then surrounded Yang San and the others. Put your hands on your heads and squat down. Tell us your true identities, or we'll shoot. The black muzzles were fixed on Yang San and the others. Che Chao first stood in front of Yang San, using his body as a human shield, then said, "We're all on the same side, don't misunderstand." Who's on the same side as you? You keep saying that you're from the security bureau, but why didn't we receive any orders? You want to play the role of a spy from the security bureau? Your performance is still lacking. Dong Hui jumped out, accusing Che Chao and the others of having a problem with their identities. Che Chao's identity was known to many of the Ling Feng patrolling the area, who often appeared at the docks. Now that he said this, of course, everyone believed him and not Yang San and the others. Che Chao's group, Dong Hui's accusation, everyone had their own opinions. If this continued, the situation would only get worse. Seeing that the situation was about to get out of control, Yang San finally stood up and said, "All of you, shut up." As Yang San spoke, he took out an officer's certificate and handed it to a Class 1 sergeant, Ling Feng. "This is my certificate. It's enough to prove my identity. If you still don't believe me, send someone to the palace with this and find Yang Wu. He will verify everything." Leng of Ling Feng's is Leng, the Leng's is SSS, it's. Seeing that it was a green military ID, squad leader Ling Feng took it without any hesitation. He opened it and saw the words Yang San, Director of the Security Bureau, Senior Colonel, written on it. The rank of colonel was also the highest in the mercenary army at that time. Other than Yang Chendong, the 1st Division Commander of the Army, Ling Song, and the 1st Division Commander of the Navy, Gao Xiong, were only at the same rank. However, a senior colonel had appeared in front of him. Ling Feng's expression changed as he looked at Yang San. Speaking of which, if Yang San's military certificate showed that he was a major, or even a lieutenant colonel, it wouldn't have aroused Ling Feng's suspicions. However, the senior colonel was too eye-catching. It gave people a surreal feeling. If that's the case, I'll need to send someone to the palace with this document. I hope you can understand. Class monitor Ling Feng didn't dare to make a decision at the moment, so he decided to do as the other party said. After all, he knew Yang Wu. Yang Wu would come to the docks to check on things when he had nothing to do. Sure, but I have a request. No one here is allowed to leave. Also, what happened here must not be spread out before Yang Wu arrives. Yang San nodded. He could understand the other party's actions. They were also doing things according to the rules, but he wouldn't allow others to ruin his big plan. All right. Class monitor Ling Feng was also very straightforward. After making a promise to Yang San, he sent the vice squad leader out and told him to ride a bicycle to the palace to see Yang Wuyi. Ling Feng didn't speak to him. Instead, after looking at the document, his attitude changed greatly. In Dong Hui's eyes, all of this gave him a bad feeling. The other party claimed to be from the security bureau, but he had never seen them before. Moreover, judging from Ling Feng's attitude towards them, they seemed to be of a very high rank. Could it be that the other party was his superior? When he thought about how the security bureau mostly communicated through a single line, such a possibility existed, his expression became somewhat ugly. The mission that Director Chen Shuquan had given him was to watch here and not allow strangers to come ashore. If there were any, he had to report it. For the sake of his duty, he prepared to leave quietly. But just as he took a step forward, Yang San's voice rang out, "You are very smart and know how to see the situation. It's just that you followed the wrong person. If you can turn over a new leaf, you can be considered a promising talent." He didn't think that his actions would be seen by others. At this moment, Dong Hui knew that he couldn't leave, so he could only turn his head and chuckle. Then, he stood there and waited. He was following orders, and what he did was in accordance with the rules. There was really no need to be afraid of others. Both parties waited here. In less than an hour, the sound of bicycle bells rang out in the distance. Following that, Yang Wu led a group of Ling Feng and appeared here. Even though it was night and the lights at the pier weren't very bright, Yang San still recognized at a glance that this time, it wasn't only Yang Wu who came. The division commander of the army's 1st Division, Ling Song, also appeared with him. Yang Wu was naturally dressed casually, while Ling Song was indeed wearing a senior colonel's military uniform. The 2 bars and 4 fours were extremely dazzling under the light. Seeing that the division commander had arrived, the platoon commander at the pier immediately stood at attention and saluted. Ling Song stopped the bicycle and casually bowed to the soldiers of the Ling Feng. He strode over to Yang San with a smile on his face and said, "Chief Yang, why didn't you say anything before coming? This is a surprise attack, isn't it?" Seeing that not only did the division commander know Yang San, but his attitude was also so warm, the platoon commander at the side naturally retreated to the side. At this moment, Dong Hui's expression also turned ugly. It was obvious that he had made a mistake this time. It seemed that not only was the other party one of his men, but his position was also quite high. Yang San returned the military salute to Ling Song, but there was no smile on his face. After the salute, he said to Che Chao, "Restrain these 4 people, I want to interrogate them later." After making some simple arrangements, Yang San looked at Ling Song and glanced at Yang Wu. He only said one sentence, "Young master is very angry this time." With just one sentence, Yang Wu, who was incomparably famous in Crimson Nest City, who was called Yang Wuyi, immediately lowered his head. Just one sentence was enough to show that the young master was dissatisfied with him. As one of the first 5 servants of the Yang family, they were different from the others. Others might have to rely on military merits to be promoted, but their status rose along with Yang Xie's continuous growth. If one had to describe it, they were the same as the eunuchs by the emperor's side. They only needed to serve Yang Chendong well. It could be said that a single sentence determined their future and life. Now that the master was angry, it meant that Yang Wu didn't do his job well. Yang Wu felt very ashamed. Seeing Yang Wu lower his head, Yang San didn't say anything else. Instead, he looked at Leng Song and said, "Young master is also very dissatisfied with your work. Crimson City is Yang Xie's foundation, yet such a big thing happened. You didn't notice it, didn't report it, and didn't solve it. This time, you lost points. Yes, I will reflect." Leng Song also lowered his head, looking like he had done something wrong and was very regretful. Logically speaking, with his position in the military, Leng Song was the 1st Regiment commander of the army, the 1st Division commander of the army. Other than Yang Qindong, very few people could suppress him, not even Yang San. However, the problem was that Yang San came as an imperial envoy to solve the problem. His position was completely different. He came as a representative of the 6th young master. What he said was also instructed by the 6th young master. Other than admitting his mistake, he could only cooperate. There is no use in reflecting. The young master wants to see results. I hope that you can redeem yourselves and cooperate with my work. If you can't even do this well, I can only report the truth to the young master. When the time comes, if your positions change, don't blame me. Yang San didn't want to have any deep contact with Leng Song. Although the other party was also in a high position, he was very clear about his own identity. He was a servant of the Yang family, one of the young master's people. He only served the young master and didn't need to care about other people's feelings. Moreover, as the head of the security bureau, if he had too much contact with important members of the military, in the eyes of others, it was inevitable that they would have other thoughts. If that was the case, he couldn't imagine what the result would be. Yang San's official words fell into Leng Song's ears. He didn't even dare to have any thoughts of objecting. Yes, Leng Feng of the army will definitely cooperate. We will definitely cooperate. Very good. That was to lock up Leng Feng in this class first. It's not that they did anything wrong, but this is an important matter. We can't be careless in the slightest. My arrival is still a secret and definitely can't be spread. Understand? Yang San was satisfied with Leng Song's attitude. He took this opportunity to give his first order after coming ashore. Chapter 730. Understood. Leng Song nodded, then called over an adjutant beside him. He whispered a few words, and someone immediately went to implement this matter. Just as Leng Song finished making the arrangements, Yang San spoke again. From today onwards, the dock will look the same as usual on the surface, but in fact, any personnel and goods entering or leaving the dock will need my permission to go out to sea. In order not to alert the enemy, you can make a move at sea. In short, the dock must be safe and sound. This matter will require Division Commander Leng's attention. As for the matters at sea, I will visit Division Commander Gao Xiong and explain it to him. Good, good. There are no problems on my side. I will personally arrange for people to guard here. Absolutely nothing will happen. Leng Song patted his chest and promised. Thank you for your hard work. Everyone, do what you are supposed to do. Later, write down everything you know about Yang Taizhu and Chen Shuquan on a piece of paper and have someone send it to me. I want to know more about them. Yang San's businesslike face gave off a huge psychological pressure. After saying this, Yang San turned and walked over to Dong Hui and the other three. After arranging the external affairs, it was time to deal with the internal affairs of the Security Bureau. At this time, Dong Hui was no longer as lively as before. Instead, he had a face full of respect and worship. From Che Chao's mouth, he finally knew who he was facing just now. It was actually the boss of the Security Bureau. This made him excited, but also a little afraid. He was excited because he had worshipped the bureau chief for a long time. Now that he could finally see his idol at such a close distance, his heartbeat had already sped up countless times. He was afraid because he had stopped the other party and even almost made a move on him. He didn't know what kind of punishment he would receive for doing something wrong. With these feelings of apprehension, Dong Hui knelt on the ground with a plop the moment Yang San strode into the duty room at the side of the dock. At this moment, he only had one thought, and that was to do his best to make up for what he had done wrong. Yang San boldly sat down on a chair in the duty room. He looked at Dong Hui, who was kneeling on the floor and didn't even dare to raise his head, and said, "I heard that you are Chen Shuchuan's trusted aide. Have you ever participated in his matters?" He thought that the director would reprimand him for his actions just now, but he didn't expect that the director was talking about something else. After a moment of hesitation, Dong Hui immediately shook his head and said, "I'm from the Security Bureau. Usually, I only come into contact with Director Chen for work matters, such as guarding the docks and keeping an eye on all suspicious people. As for Director Chen's private affairs, I have no right to participate, nor will I participate." With just a few words, Dong Hui had already made his position clear. That was, he was only Chen Shuchuan's subordinate. The reason why he was chosen as Chen Shuchuan's confidant was because of his ability. As for personal friendship, there was really nothing to it. This was also one of the rules of the Security Bureau. There was only work between superiors and subordinates, and there was no personal relationship between them. This way, it was possible to avoid any feelings between the two parties and make them emotional during work. When Yang San heard Dong Hui's words, he nodded in satisfaction. He was not worried that this person would dare to lie to him. The internal rules of the Security Bureau were very strict. If he deceived his superior, it would be difficult for him to die even if he wanted to. Moreover, there were some things that he only needed to send someone to investigate and he could come to a conclusion. Dong Hui should know this. In this way, Dong Hui should not be involved in Chen Shuchuan's affairs much. From this point of view, this person could still be used. If he performed well, it was not impossible to put him in an important position in the future. He thought that Che Chao was going to replace Chen Shuchuan's position, but he was a newcomer and couldn't sort out many relationships for a while. If he had the help of a local snake like Dong Hui, then the progress of the work would definitely speed up. Yang San had an idea in his mind. When he looked at Dong Hui, who was kneeling on the ground, he was no longer as cold and ruthless as before when he spoke. "Dong Hui, I believe what you just said for the time being, but you should also know that if you lie to me, what will the consequences be? Yes, your subordinate knows, so your subordinate will never dare to lie to the director." Dong Hui hurriedly kowtowed to the ground. At this moment, he just wanted to dig out his heart to show the director that he really didn't participate in some of Chen Shuchuan's specific affairs. In fact, it was not that Dong Hui didn't want to, but that Chen Shuquan was being careful. Since it was a secret, of course, the fewer people who knew, the better. Besides, once the matter was known by his subordinates, if one of them contacted the headquarters and reported the matter to the director, wouldn't he be shooting himself in the foot? Yang San also thought about this problem, so he initially ruled out the possibility that Dong Hui was involved in the smuggling incident. Even if the other party didn't have this motive and condition, Yang San could say something openly. "Very well, I hope you haven't participated. If so, your opportunity to make a contribution will come. To tell you the truth, this time, the director came in person to solve some of Chen Shuchuan's personal problems. If there is no accident, he can no longer be competent for the position of the director of the Crimson City Security Bureau. There are still a lot of things to do next, and even the entire Crimson City Security Bureau will undergo a big reshuffle. If you perform well, you can still stay and be entrusted with important tasks. As for where to go, you can make your own choice." What choice was there? One was heaven, the other was hell. Dong Hui didn't even want to think about it more. He immediately said, "Director, please rest assured, I will perform well and actively cooperate. Raise your head." Since he was going to continue to use Dong Hui, and in order not to alert the enemy and arouse Chen Shuchuan's suspicion, Yang San decided to add more weight to Dong Hui and give him a good reminder. Hearing this, Dong Hui raised his head and saw Yang San glaring at him. "Remember, if you dare to have any selfish motives or ruin things, I promise you that you will suffer a fate worse than death. Your family and relatives will suffer the same fate, understand?" "Understood, understood." Dong Hui was really frightened by this gaze, but after raising his head, he immediately lowered it again, trembling all over. After convincing Dong Hui, or putting enough pressure on him, Yang San walked out of the dock's duty room. He looked at Che Chao, who was guarding the door, and said, "There shouldn't be any problems with this person, but you still need to send someone to check on him. If you're sure there's no problem, use him well. He should be one of your capable assistants in the future." "Yes, Director," subordinate understands. Che Chao's expression didn't change, and then began to call people to investigate Dong Hui's situation. At the same time, he also wanted to interrogate the other 3 Security Bureau agents to get first-hand information. Yang San came to Crimson City. Although he was still discovered, he managed to salvage the situation in time. Furthermore, when he found Yang Wu, Leng Song happened to be there as well. With the help of the number 1 person in the army, the matter of him arriving at the dock was suppressed. No one reported, and even the people guarding the dock were pressured by Yang San's power and chose to follow. As the director of Crimson City Security Bureau, Chen Shuquan didn't know anything. He still did what he was supposed to do, preparing for another smuggling operation in 3 days. Yang Taizhu went to the palace more frequently these 2 days. Of course, with his status, he could not enter the inner palace. He could only meet his wife, Lin Lin, who he spent a lot of effort to catch up with, in the outer palace. He took the opportunity to get information from her, wanting to see if the palace was any different than usual. Since it was Yang Chendong's personal order, all the actions were naturally concealed. Not to mention that Lin Lin was only a servant girl that the 5th Madam fancied. Even the 5th Madam herself didn't know that Yang San came to Crimson City to investigate. After hugging Lin Lin tenderly for a while, Yang Taizhu left the palace with a satisfied face. He didn't find anything wrong, so he decided to do everything according to plan. He thought that after this matter was done, he would have a large sum of money. In the long run, his Yang family would be rich enough to rival a country. At that time, even if there was a possibility of the matter being exposed, he would just leave Crimson City. After he had enough money, even if he formed a team, building a country wouldn't be a problem. Yang Taizhu was sometimes a little arrogant. Since Yang Chendong could do it from scratch, why couldn't he do it with so much money? Nobles, generals, and ministers, it was better to have guts. Doing too much injustice leads to one's own destruction. This sentence was said by the ancients, and the truth also proved the authenticity and reliability of this sentence. 3 days later, when the time came to 9:30 p.m., when the docks began to return to silence, Director Chen Shuquan appeared on time. Just like the previous times when he smuggled goods, he still used the name of the Security Bureau, saying that he wanted to secretly transport a batch of goods out to sea. With this name, when he brought 60 to 70 carriages of goods all the way to the new docks, no one dared to check. The green light all the way let the goods be sent to the long-prepared cargo ship. While the goods were being loaded, Director Chen Shuquan took out a box of Aries brand cigarettes from his pocket. He took out a stick and put it in his mouth, then took out another stick and handed it to the head of the Security Bureau, Dong Hui. It had to be said that cigarettes could not only reduce stress and loneliness, but also play a strong role in communication. The cigarette was lit, and the relationship between Chen Shuquan and Dong Hui seemed to be a lot closer at this moment. Dong Hui, did anything happen at the docks during this time? When he said this, Chen Shuquan's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he could see through Dong Hui's heart. Chapter 731. Nothing happened. Everything is normal, Yi Zichen said. Dong Hui said with a smile, but his heart was beating like a drum. After all, Chen Shuquan was his superior, and he really had no confidence in lying in front of his superior. Fortunately, he was very smart and did not dwell on this matter. Instead, he took the initiative to change the topic and asked, "Director, are these things to be given to the Security Bureau personnel outside the island?" "There are a lot of these things." Chen Shuquan, who was still smiling, immediately changed his expression and said seriously, "Have you forgotten the confidentiality rules? Don't ask what you shouldn't ask, don't say what you shouldn't say." How can you know these things with your status? Alright, you must be tired these days. Go home and have a good rest, there's no need for you here. The sudden coldness caused Dong Hui to pretend to be scared. He nodded his head repeatedly and then left. Looking at his back, Chen Shuchuan's heart was already filled with killing intent. His subordinate was curious about this batch of goods. This was not a good sign, and it was best to kill the other party once and for all. Dong Hui did not know that Chen Shuquan had the intention to kill him. In fact, even if he knew, he would not be afraid. Right now, his backer was the bureau chief. As for now, since he was kicked out, of course, he had to inform the higher-ups of the news as soon as possible. This was a good opportunity to perform meritorious deeds. In order not to attract Chen Shuchuan's attention, Che Chao did not place one of his own people at the dock. He only did two things. The first was to control the sea area outside the new dock in Crimson City, and the second was to wait for Dong Hui's news. One in and one out, both points were controlled. Che Chao firmly believed that unless Yang Taizhu and Chen Shuquan did not do anything, they would not be able to escape the big net he set up. But what he did not expect was that the other party would take the bait so quickly. When Dong Hui found Che Chao with sweat all over his forehead and said that their director Chen Shuquan sent dozens of carts of goods to the dock in the name of the security bureau, Che Chao also stood up from his chair excitedly. He often followed Bureau Chief Yang San, so he naturally knew that the security bureau did not inform him about the goods. In other words, tonight's action was completely decided by Chen Shuquan. Since that was the case, there was no doubt that the goods were smuggled. Very good, Dong Hui. You've made a great contribution this time. How about this, I'll give you 50 elite brothers. You take them to capture the backbone of the city's security bureau. As long as they don't resist, don't kill them. If they resist, you can be heavy-handed. In short, do not allow any important personnel to escape or leave our sight. Do you understand? Dong Hui had already used his actions to prove his position. At this moment, Che Chao could be considered to have completely trusted him. Yes, please rest assured, Director Che. I'll get it done right away. Dong Hui was also a little excited. This was a heavy responsibility. From this moment on, not only would he be pulled out of the Chen Shuquan case, but he would also enter the list of meritorious people. It could be imagined that his future would be limitless. Che Chao quickly left with the 50 elites of the security bureau. Che Chao immediately got up and rushed to the place where Director Yang was resting. Not long after, a large net was spread out, and a series of plans on paper became the final practical action. Yang residence. Ever since Yang Shan was tricked by Yang Chendong, he was sent to Baiming from Nanming. After he was sent to Qiqian City, he was given a large residence. He was appointed as the Minister of Foreign Affairs to formulate foreign policies. Yang Shan had contributed greatly to the peaceful liberation of the first Shang dynasty. As a result, his words carried weight in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It was said that a weak country had no diplomacy. Although Qiqian City didn't establish a country, it was better than one. Powerful military and economic capabilities made it easy for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to work with foreign countries. After establishing the two provinces of Vietnam and Laos, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs set up branches there respectively, and its status became even more extraordinary. In addition, Yang Shan and Qiqian City's mayor, Yu Qian, and the Special Inspector Bureau's director, Xin Yu, used to be officials in the same court. All of these made Yang Shan's position unshakable. As a result, the Yang family could be arrogant when they were outside, as though they were superior to others. As the saying goes, a man whose heart is not content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Yang Shan, who was originally the left assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights in Nanming, was no longer the same as before. He should be reminiscing about the past. However, there were people who wouldn't forget their past hardships after gaining power. Instead, they believed that everything they had now was because of the hardships and tiredness they had suffered. This was the reward they deserved after putting in so much effort. When a person thought that everything he had was reasonable and deserved, his mentality would naturally change as a result. Yang Shan was the most typical example. With this kind of inflated mentality, the actions of his son, Yang Taizhu, seemed to be a matter of course. The Yang residence was brightly lit. Although it was already past 10 at night, most of the commoners were already asleep. However, it was still as bright as day in the Yang residence. All of this was because another batch of goods had left today. It wouldn't be long before countless taels of silver would be sent to them. With money and power, people would become inflated. Yang Taizhu was the most typical example. At this moment, he wasn't sleeping. Instead, he was very energetic and was playing a game of hide-and-seek with 4 young women. It was different from other people playing this game. If any of the 4 women were caught by Yang Taizhu, they would have to strip naked. This was what rich people did. What they did was to have fun. The 4 women were commoners who had spent money to trade with Nanming. They were originally good-looking, but because their living conditions weren't good, they became sallow and emaciated over time. However, the moment they were chosen by Yang Taizhu in the refugee camp, their lives had already changed. They ate well and wore warm clothes every day. All they needed to do was to become this man's plaything. When a poor person had problems even eating their fill, there was no need to talk about ideals and dignity. For a mouthful of food, the 4 women could only comply and allow Yang Taizhu to humiliate them. They were angry, but they didn't dare to say anything. Even though Yang Chendong had already stipulated that true Han people weren't allowed to buy and sell privately, and they weren't allowed to be forced or restricted. However, when they fell into Yang Taizhu's hands, how could they have the chance to redress their grievances? Not to mention, even if they wanted to sue, where would they find the right way to do so? In the face of the powerful Yang residents, an existence that could cover the sky with one hand, anyone could only accept their fate. Yang Taizhu was in a good mood. He was in the mood to play tonight. He was prepared to capture all 4 women and sleep with them. Thus, even though it was already late at night, he still didn't have the intention to rest. From time to time, the women's screams and Yang Taizhu's satisfied laughter could be heard in the residence. This wasn't the first time such a scene had appeared. The servants in the residence were almost used to it. In any case, as long as the young master was happy, he could do whatever he wanted as the master. How could they dare to interfere? Who could interfere? Dong 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 dong. Suddenly, a loud knocking sound broke this laughter. In the middle of the night in the Yang manor, it was very sudden and unexpected. Who is it? It's already the middle of the night, why are you knocking on the door? The gatekeeper sleepily got up and walked to the main entrance. He opened a small door, wanting to see who was so blind to disturb the Yang residents in the middle of the night. The moment the small door was opened, countless tall figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Then, without waiting for the gatekeeper to do anything or even open his mouth to cry out in alarm, those tall figures rushed in through the small door like fish in the sea. There was also a tall figure who immediately reached out and covered the door's mouth, blocking it completely, making it unable to make any sound. Ugh! The gatekeeper still wanted to struggle, but a clear voice rang in his ears. We are the Cold Vanguard warriors. We are going to search the Yang residence. This place is going to be over soon. You better cooperate. If you still dare to scream, even if we kill you in the next moment, it will be in vain. The people who came were indeed the Cold Vanguard warriors. Their mission was to surround the Yang residence and eliminate all security threats. The order even stated that if anyone resisted, they could use ruthless means to subdue them or even kill them. However, he was just a gatekeeper. They were all here to earn a living. The Cold Vanguard warriors did not really want to kill him. The gatekeeper finally became obedient. After all, when faced with a life-threatening situation, the so-called 1 month's salary was nothing. The Cold Blade warriors walked past them and charged towards various parts of the Yang estate. Long before they came, they had already obtained the blueprint of the Yang mansion. After clearly understanding the situation inside, they could ensure that they could control all the vital points in the shortest amount of time, minimizing the possible resistance and threats that might exist in the Yang mansion to the greatest extent. As more and more cold vanguard warriors rushed into the Yang residence, the servants in the residence finally noticed them. Then, there was a series of shouts and screams, causing the entire residence to become chaotic. It also startled Yang Taizhu, who was still playing his game. "Young master, this is bad. A lot of cold vanguard warriors suddenly appeared in the residence and surrounded us. Our armory has also been sealed by them. What should we do?" A burly man who looked like a servant rushed into Yang Taizhu's courtyard and saw that there were already two young ladies dressed in pure white clothes. However, he acted as if he did not see them and spoke with a panicked expression. Chapter 732. Yang Taizhu, whose eyes were still covered by a black cloth, instinctively wanted to fly into a rage when he heard that someone had broken into his backyard. This was his private property, and usually, no one was allowed to enter without orders. Otherwise, there would only be one result: death. Just as he was about to flare up, he suddenly froze when he heard that Ling Feng had barged into his residence. Then, with a wave of his right hand, he tore off the black cloth that was covering his eyes and asked with a ferocious look on his face. "What happened?" Before the servant could answer, more footsteps came from outside the door. Then, a cold front officer wearing a military uniform with the insignia of a colonel on his shoulder appeared in the backyard. Behind him was a dense group of cold front soldiers with calm expressions and sharp eyes. Yang Taizhu, who was about to angrily scold the intruder for intruding into his private residence, saw the intruder's face clearly. His original anger instantly disappeared and was replaced by a smile. "Huh, so it's Regiment Commander Teng. Please forgive me for not welcoming you when you've come to visit." The intruder was Ting Shan, the 1st Regiment commander of the Cold Front Army. Due to his seniority and fearlessness in battle, he was deeply trusted by Yang Chendong. Even in the entire Qiqian city, there were not many people who could make him lower his head. Normally, even his father, Yang Shan, who was the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, would show him some respect. Seeing that it was this person who appeared in his residence, although Yang Taizhu was furious, he still didn't lose his temper. Ting Shan didn't immediately answer Yang Taizhu's question. He only glanced behind Yang Taizhu. When he saw that 2 of the 4 women were only wearing a thin layer of green gauze while the other 2 were already clean, he frowned slightly. "The 4 of you should immediately find clothes and put them on. It's really immoral to be like this." The 4 ladies were already frightened by the cold blade warriors who rushed in. When they heard Ting Shan's words, it was as if they had heard the sound of nature. They hurriedly retreated to look for clothes, but before that, they still looked at Yang Taizhu with pleading eyes. This person was their master. If he didn't say anything, they wouldn't dare to act rashly. Even though their current clothes were very embarrassing and they had already abandoned their dignity, they still stood there foolishly after a long time of getting used to it. "All right, go and put on your clothes." Yang Taizhu forced a smile and said to the 4 women. Only then did the 4 beautiful figures quickly disappear. When Yang Taizhu was left standing there alone, he said to Ting Shan in a fawning tone, "Regiment Commander Teng, I don't know what made you so angry. If there's anything I can do for you, I will definitely do my best. How about this? It's really tiring for the brothers to carry out a mission so late at night. Why don't you all receive 10 silvers as compensation?" Yang Taizhu said as he observed the changes in Ting Shan. He was not too flustered in his heart. Firstly, his background was deep enough. His father was in the residence and he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. His wife, Lin Lin, was also in the palace serving the 5th Madam. She was his biggest trump card. If something happened to him, she would definitely not sit back and do nothing. Secondly, he was confident that no one could blackmail him. This was also why he was very confident in Chen Shuquan, the director of the Security Bureau. All along, the Security Bureau had been a unified system. Even the military had no right to question or investigate what they did in Crimson City. Of course, it was not that he did not think that something might have happened to Chen Shuquan, but he quickly denied it in his heart. Chen Shuquan was the director of the security bureau in Crimson City. He was the number one existence. Who could investigate him? Who had the authority to investigate him? No matter what, even if something really happened to Chen Shuquan and he was investigated. What did that have to do with him? He was a good citizen. Although he had been working with Chen Shuquan, he did not leave any evidence. Even if something happened to the other party, there was no evidence to blame him. Not to mention, as long as something didn't happen immediately, with his father and Madam's relationship, after some interaction, he would definitely be able to turn big things into small ones. Yang Taizhu was very confident. When he looked at Ting Shan, he was no longer as afraid as before. He even openly mentioned the matter of bribery. From this, it could be seen how bold he was. Hearing that Yang Taizhu wanted to give the Lengfeng soldiers money for their hard work, Ting Shan chuckled. 10 silvers for a soldier, young Master Yang is really generous. These words were said with a smile, so Yang Taizhu was unable to see the other party's true intentions. He could only smile apologetically and continue. It's nothing, it's nothing. The Lengfeng soldiers have sacrificed so much for the entire city and island. It's only right for me to contribute a little. It's only right. It's only right. Then I ask young Master Yang to cooperate with us again and make a trip with us. Ting Shan still had a smile on his face as he spoke. At the same time, he was disgusted by Yang Tiezhu's hypocrisy. Since he was able to enter the Yang residence in the middle of the night, he naturally received orders and knew the cause and effect of the matter. Although he did not know the details, his intuition told him that Yang Taizhu was finished this time. Even the Yang family would not be any better. Since that was the case, why should he be polite to a person who was destined to be finished? Seeing that Ting Shan suddenly turned hostile and wanted to take him away, Yang Tiezhu's face completely changed. Ah! What are you doing? What are you doing? Commander Teng, are you mistaken? I'm one of your own people. I'm also an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What authority do you have to take me away? Do you know the Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Relying on his father's relationship, Yang Taizhu had indeed obtained a position in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He was not in charge of anything. To put it bluntly, he was just in charge of an official position. Now, this amulet had finally come into play. Seeing that Yang Taizhu did not cooperate and even used the name of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ting Shan did not show the slightest bit of surprise. Instead, he smiled and said, "Young Master Yang, please cooperate with us. As for your identity as an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we will give you a satisfactory answer very soon. Come, take him away." Ting Shan didn't want to waste any more time. After giving the order, 2 cold vanguard warriors with big waists walked out from behind him and rushed to Yang Tiezhu's front. They lowered their heads and gave Yang Taizhu a firm press. Yang Taizhu, whose body was restrained and head was pressed down, did not give up resisting. He still shouted with all his might, let me go, I'm an officer in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You can't do this to me, you can't." His shouts went from his courtyard to the main entrance of the Yang residence. Just as Ting Shan and the rest appeared here, a thunderous voice rang in their ears. "What are you doing?" "Ah!" Hearing this voice, Yang Taizhu, who was pressed down, seemed to have found his backbone. He raised his head abruptly and saw that the person who spoke was his father, Yang Shan. He immediately shouted, "Father, save me, father, save me. My son, don't worry. With your father here, no one can take you away from the residence. I have already arranged for someone to inform your wife. I believe she will not allow anyone to do this." Yang Shan's mountain-like voice rang out once again. At this moment, he displayed sufficient calmness. Although Yang Shan did not participate in some of Yang Tiezhu's matters, it was impossible to say that he did not know anything. His son had done a lot of things under his name. He had more or less heard about it, but he did not interfere. Firstly, it was because he loved his son dearly. Secondly, his son would give him a lot of gold and silver every time. He used this to unite many officials and colleagues, which allowed him to do his work more easily. Not only did Yang Shan not feel ashamed of his son's actions, he even thought that this was a manifestation of his ability. After all, when he was an official in the Great Ming, who knew how many officials would take advantage of the situation to do things that crossed the line? When everyone did this, there was no need to criticize others. Therefore, he also thought that it was normal for the same thing to happen in Qiqian City. Not to mention, his son was very scheming. Before doing anything, he first married the servant girl that the fifth madam had an important position in. This was equivalent to finding a strong ally and backer. His son was so careful in doing things, so he would only be more at ease. However, tonight, Ling Feng suddenly entered the residence and indeed caught him off guard. However, he was not very frightened. Other than sending someone to inform Lin Lin, this daughter-in-law with a strong background, he only needed to stall for time. For him, as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, this was not a big deal. After saying this confidently, Yang Shan looked at Ting Shan and said sternly, "Regiment Commander Teng, my son is an official in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He's a cadre. He's an official who has been appointed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. What happened to him should be investigated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so it is better not to trouble you." The Ministry of Foreign Affairs was clearly Yang Shan treated Yang Tieju's matter as an internal matter of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so it should be handled and solved by them. Yang Shan was confident, but he thought about it carefully. Since Ting Shan had appeared here, how could it be possible that he did not have anything to rely on? Facing Yang Shan, this high official, Ting Shan's tone was very calm, but he was also very calm. He said in a businesslike manner, "I'm sorry, Minister Yang. I received the order to take young Master Yang away. As for what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs wants to do, that is your business. Please do not affect my work. I am also talking about work. I represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs." Yang Shan did not have the slightest intention of backing down. He also shouted in a thunderous voice. It was really difficult for him. He was not young, but he seemed to be very confident. Chapter 733. This time, Yang Shan wanted to use his seniority to oppress the other party. It was true that Yang Qindong had his eyes on Ting Shan, but he was only a regiment commander. Facing the Minister of Foreign Affairs, there was still a lot of pressure. Just as the situation became tense, a thunderous voice suddenly came from behind the Ling Feng. "I'm sorry, Minister Yang, but you can no longer represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs." As the voice fell, a group of people walked out from behind the crowd. When they saw this group of people, all the Ling Feng involuntarily took a step back and showed a very respectful expression. This was because the three people who came were of high status. Two of them were of high status. They were Yang Wu, Ling Song, and Ma Dali. There was no need to say much about Yang Wu. When Yang Qindong was in Crimson City, he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs representative. His status was even higher than City Lord Yu Qian. Ling Song was the commander of the army's 1st Division and was known as the #1 person in the army. There were even rumors that the 1st Division would become the 1st Army. When that time came, if there were no accidents, the position of 1st Army commander would fall on him. He was also the superior of all the Ling Feng in the city. His every move was naturally very eye-catching. The third person was Ma Dali. Although his name was very domineering and he looked very burly, he had an official status. He was the first deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Someone once said that the people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs should be eloquent and look kind. Only then would it be helpful for both sides to negotiate. A brawny man like Ma Dali shouldn't be in such a team. However, when everyone thought that it was inappropriate, Yang Qindong did the opposite. He appointed this person as the first deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and gave the authority to Yang Shan. The reason why he did this was because what Yang Xia needed now was a strong minister of foreign affairs. Ma Dali fit this role perfectly. For example, the shout that Yang Shan could no longer represent the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was made by Ma Dali. When the three of them appeared, the pressure on Tingshan was greatly reduced. Yang Taizhu also lowered his head. He knew very well that this situation was not something his father could handle. Perhaps when Madame arrived, she could represent Fifth Madame to deal with these people. Yang Taizhu placed his hopes on his wife. Yang Shan's expression changed rapidly at this moment, especially when he saw Madali appear. His eyelids twitched violently, and his intuition told him that things were not going well. However, for the sake of his son's safety, he had to hold on until his daughter-in-law arrived. So it's Fifth Master Yang and Division Master Leng. Your presence brings light to my humble abode, but why didn't you inform me in advance so that I could go out and welcome you? Yang Shan was indeed someone who often dealt with people. His expression quickly returned to normal. He smiled at Yang Wu and Leng Song, as if they were old friends who had a very good relationship. On the other hand, Ma Dali, who was standing beside the two of them, turned a blind eye. Ma Dali was only his assistant. Choosing to ignore him at this moment showed how domineering he was. Yang Shan wanted to use this to tell everyone that those who were not as high as him and those who were not as high as him should not speak anymore. He would not listen either. Both Yang Wu and Leng Song understood Yang Shan's little scheme. Perhaps they did not have this kind of experience before, nor had they experienced such a secret struggle. However, they had been in a high position for so many years. Even if they had not seen a pig being slaughtered, how could they not have eaten pork? In such a big environment, it was not something that could be avoided just because one wanted to. Some things had long been accustomed to. Not only did they understand Yang Shan's little scheme, but they also knew very well in their hearts. Leng Song smiled when he saw that Yang Shan had made his move. Then, he said, "It's just to catch a person. How could we alarm Division Master Yang?" When Leng Song said this, Yang Shan also smiled. Anyone could tell that this was not a hearty laugh, but a sneer. Division Master Leng makes it sound so easy. This time, the person you want to catch is my son. As a parent, I think I have the right to know what is going on. However, I wonder if Division Master Leng can tell me what crime my son committed. Do you have any evidence? Yang Shan asked in return. His voice did not contain any emotional fluctuations, but anyone could tell that he was on the verge of exploding. It seemed that if a reasonable answer was not given, he would stop them from taking the person away. Who was Yang Shan? During the reign of Ren Xuanji, he became an official of the Great Ming Dynasty. Later, when Zhu Qizhen took over, he was already the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights. He had also experienced the Tumu Revolution. In the end, he went to the southern Ming Dynasty under the protection and help of Yang Qindong. Such an experienced person who was used to deceiving and deceiving each other had long since mastered the art of calmness. He wouldn't be so easily angered. However, he still pretended to be like this. It was tantamount to showing his determination to protect his son's safety. At the same time, he was stalling for time and waiting for his daughter-in-law to arrive. He was also testing Leng Song's confidence. He wanted to see what kind of evidence the other party had and what he needed to do if he wanted to protect his son. Yang Shan stood up. He had single-handedly carried Yang Wu and Leng Song, the two great mountains who had come to the manor. His boldness was enough, and his courage was admirable. If it was some ordinary small matter, he would have to give face and let him go if he personally stood up. What was pitiful was that this time, the order was personally given by the sixth young master. No matter how determined Yang Shan was, he could not overturn the situation this time. The reason why they did not use thunderous methods was because the batch of things that had been sent to the sea had not been shipped back. They could not be completely sure what was inside. Without any definite information, Leng Song was not in a hurry to make the final move. Instead, he chuckled and said, "This is strange. Doesn't your son know what he has done? Why is he asking me about it?" "Commander Leng, I did not do anything. You are accusing me wrongly. It is nothing more than your military being envious of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You are accusing me wrongly." Although Yang Taizhu, who was being escorted, was restrained, his mouth was not sealed. He could still speak. Seeing that his father was exonerating him, he took the opportunity to shout and shout. Of course, no one knew how true these words were. Most importantly, Jianghu was here. If he heard some of these words, would he think that this matter was originally due to the conflict between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the military department, and that was why this happened? After Yang Tieju's accusation, many of the cold front soldiers' faces turned ugly. Ting Shan, for example, wished he could give Yang Shan a tight slap across the face and let him know the consequences of slandering the military and its soldiers. On the other hand, Ling Song was not in a hurry. He just stood there with his hands behind his back and smiled. No one knew better than him that this time, he took action completely because Director Yang San personally came and arranged it. He was just following orders. Why would he be afraid of being accused or even framed? Yang Shan and Yang Tieju's counterattack made the originally tense Yang family courtyard fall into silence. Suddenly, everyone stopped talking. They just looked at each other like they were waiting for something. Yes. Everyone was waiting. The Yang father and son were waiting for Lin Lin's arrival. As long as she came, she could represent the fifth young mistress to express her attitude. She was one of the matriarchs. When the master was not around, no one could shake the position of the matriarch. She would have the effect of changing the situation. Yang Wu and Leng Song were waiting for the news from the new dock. As long as the cargo ship was transported back, Chen Shuquan would be caught and betrayed Yang Taizhu. Then, they could start the next step of the operation. At that time, no one would be able to stop them. While waiting like this, the 3 cargo ships on the new dock of Qiqian City began to dock again. The dozens of large carts of goods on them were also transported back to the new dock one by one. Director Chen Shuquan, who was about to leave, was stunned by the scene in front of him. According to his habit, every time the goods were transported out, he would stay at the new dock for a while. After confirming that there were no other problems, he would leave. After all, it was the goods of the Security Bureau. As the director, it was reasonable for him to stay a little longer. Of course, he would stay a little longer because Chen Shuquan was cautious. He was worried that someone would have designs on the cargo ships of the Security Bureau. If he did not stay here, what would he do if something went wrong? And it was this long stop that allowed him to see a good show. The 3 cargo ships that had just set out sailed back, and even the cold front navy came back with the ships. The ships were still the same ships, and the escorts were still the same people. The appearance of this scene made Chen Shuquan's heart skip a beat. He had a hunch that something bad was going to happen. He pretended to be calm and walked towards the 3 ships of goods that were docked at the dock. He was still far away, but his shout could be heard. What happened? Why are the goods being transported back? Director Chen, there was an order from above. We don't know what's going on. A cold front platoon leader in charge of escorting the goods said with a salute. The platoon leader really didn't know what happened. Due to the difference in status between the two of them, he was telling the truth. Chen Shuquan saw the platoon leader's respect. He seemed to see hope. His face changed, and he said sternly. Order? Who gave the order? Do you know that this is what the Security Bureau wants? There are a lot of things involved. How can they stop just like that? Send the goods out immediately. As for the order, I will take it for you. I promise that you will not be punished. Chapter 734. Chen Shuquan's thinking was simple. As long as the goods were sent out of the sea and handed over to the people arranged by Yang Taizhu overseas, there would be no evidence. At that time, he could just say that he didn't know anything. Without evidence, no one could casually convict him. No matter what, Chen Shuquan was still the head of the Security Bureau's office in Crimson City. His words were still very authoritative. Hearing this, platoon leader Leng Feng hesitated. After all, offending the head of the Security Bureau was not a wise move. If he really wanted to target him, how could he, a small platoon leader, resist? Platoon leader Leng Feng was still in a mental struggle, hesitating about what to do. On the new pier, another group of people had appeared. The leader was a young man with delicate features. The moment he appeared, he laughed heartily. "Brother Chen, you have such great authority. Leng Feng doesn't belong to our security bureau, yet you can order him around as you please. You're really amazing. Who is it? Who is secretly making sarcastic remarks? Come out if you have the ability." As soon as the sarcastic remarks were heard, Chen Shuchuan's face darkened. He suddenly turned his head, looking like he was looking for someone to punish. Chen Shuquan did indeed have such confidence. Director Yang San was not in Crimson City, so he was the highest-ranking person in charge of the security bureau here. From a certain point of view, he could exist side by side with military chiefs like Ling Song and Gao Xiong. Even if the people from the political department came, he could still wrestle with them. Due to the confidentiality rules, the security bureau was independent of any system and was directly under the 6th young master's jurisdiction. In other words, even if Yang Wuyi appeared here, if he was unyielding, he could still face him head-on. Of course, all of this was limited to the other party not receiving the 6th young master's orders. Thinking about how he dared to face Yang Wuyi, what a proud existence he was. It was no wonder that when he heard people talking about him like this, he immediately shouted like a plucked rooster. "Ha ha ha, Brother Chen, I haven't been hiding in the dark. I've been standing here all this time. It's just that your standards are too high and you didn't notice me." As the laughter continued, Che Chao led a group of 20 members of the Security Bureau's operations team that had been transferred from various places to Qin Shuquan. A group of people strode over. Because it was dark, they couldn't see clearly, but Qin Shuquan's expression had already begun to change. Since the other party was so fearless, his identity must not be simple. Moreover, the goods were right in front of him. How was he going to explain himself under such conclusive evidence? Chen Shuchuan's brain spun rapidly as he formulated various countermeasures in his mind. At this time, Che Chao had already strode in front of him. With the help of the street lights on the pier, they could finally see each other clearly. At this moment, Chen Shuchuan's face was filled with shock. "Che Chao, how could it be you? Why can't it be me?" Che Chao, who was far calmer than Chen Shuquan, had a smile on his face as he slowly asked, "Brother Chen, why are you so nervous? Could it be that my appearance has delayed your good fortune?" When he suddenly saw Che Chao, Chen Shuquan was indeed shocked. He could not understand why the other party would appear in Crimson City, and why he did not receive any news at all. However, he soon calmed down. After all, the other party's level was lower than his. Even so, what was there to be afraid of? Perhaps the other party had come to Crimson City to settle some personal matters, or perhaps to visit family and friends. At this point, it must be said that the majority of the staff of the Security Bureau lived in the dark, and the mental pressure was immense. Therefore, every year, they would have a normal holiday to return to society and be an ordinary person. Otherwise, they would be driven crazy. Chen Shuquan thought that Che Chao was probably on vacation, and he just happened to appear in Crimson City, which was why this scene was happening in front of him. It could be said that he was comforting himself, but in short, Chen Shuquan quickly calmed down and strode towards Che Chao. As he walked, he said, "Brother Che, it's not that I want to nag you, but since you've come to Crimson City, you should at least greet me so that I can do my part as a host, right?" Chen Shuquan took the initiative to get close to Che Chao, and Che Chao also smiled and replied, "Hey, I know that Brother Chen is busy, so I didn't come to disturb you. Please don't blame me." Che Chao being so polite made Chen Shuquan feel more at ease, and the smile on his face grew wider. "What do you mean by disturb? You don't treat me as one of your own. Just based on this point, you should be punished. How about this, I'll punish you with 3 cups of wine tonight." "Huh, let's go, I'll find a place to welcome you." As he spoke, Chen Shuchuan's large hand had already landed on Che Chao's shoulder. Those who didn't know would think that their relationship was very good. Che Chao, who was originally cupping his fists and apologizing, was waiting for Chen Shuchuan's hand to land on his shoulder. The smile on his face suddenly disappeared, and was replaced by a cold expression. His large hands suddenly grabbed Chen Shuquan's arm from his chest, and then with a twist, he pulled Chen Shuquan into his embrace, and a Type 54 firearm was pressed against Chen Shuquan's temple. "I'm sorry, Director Chen, I have important matters to attend to, so I don't have the time to drink with you." The sudden change in the situation made Chen Shuquan's subordinates, who were watching everything with a smile, stunned. Then, under the conditioned reflex of their years of training, a few of them reached into their waists, pulled out the knives on their waist, and shouted. "What are you doing? Release Director Chen immediately. Don't be agitated, let's observe the situation first." Dong Hui, who was mixed in the crowd, played a role at this time. He stretched out his arms, stopping everyone from being impulsive, and gave a few of his subordinates a look. Under Dong Hui's lead, a few of his subordinates also joined the ranks of persuading everyone not to be impulsive, causing the originally tense atmosphere to be suppressed. At this time, Chen Shuquan was in Che Chao's embrace, facing his subordinates. Seeing Dong Hui's performance, his eyes seemed to be about to pop out. But at this time, he also knew that this was not the time to fight with Dong Hui. His opponent was still Che Chao. "Old brother Che, what are you doing? Do you know that everything you're doing is offending your superiors? Do you know, according to our internal family law, if you do this, not only will you die, your family won't get any benefits? Let me tell you, let me go immediately, and for the sake of our previous relationship, I can pretend that nothing happened." Chen Shuquan was still suppressing people with his power, trying to make Che Chao stop. But now that he had the initiative, how could Che Chao easily let go? He looked at the back of Chen Shuquan's head with a smile, as if he was looking at an idiot. "Director Chen, things have already turned out like this, don't you know how to repent? Tell me, where are these things going to be shipped?" "Of course it's to the Security Bureau." Chen Shuquan gritted his teeth and said. "Security Bureau? Why don't I know about it?" Che Chao asked again. "Your rank is not high enough, of course you don't know. Let me tell you, this is the director's arrangement, and it's classified as a top secret. It's already a mistake for you to know this now, do you understand?" Relying on his higher rank, Chen Shuquan spouted nonsense. Now, as long as he could get through this, he would find a random crime to take down Che Chao. In short, he would not give Che Chao a chance to ask Yang San, he wanted to silence him. Chen Shuquan was still thinking about what to do once he had the initiative, when a very familiar voice came from behind him. "I don't understand. I've never given such an order, but I don't know who you heard it from." "Of course you don't understand, this is the Bureau." Chen Shuquan was about to say something with an arrogant look, but suddenly he was stunned. This voice was so familiar, it sounded like the Bureau. Directors. Che Chao seemed to know what he was thinking, he loosened his grip slightly, allowing him to turn his head. When he turned his head, he saw Yang San in front of him with a fierce face. Immediately, Chen Shuquan's legs turned to jelly, and he could no longer stand. With a plop, he sat on the ground. The main culprit had appeared, and Chen Shuquan knew that everything was over. The irrefutable evidence was right in front of him. He was afraid that no matter what excuse he found, it would be useless. When he thought of the director's means and the family law of the Security Bureau, it was really difficult for him to die even if he wanted to. His face turned pale at this moment. "Bureau. Director, I was wrong, Yang Taiju forced me to do everything, I was too greedy." Yang San didn't say another word, so Chen Shuquan confessed everything. Now, he no longer hoped for a future, or even to live, he only hoped for a quick death and not to implicate his family. He was very grateful. Chen Shuquan was so cooperative, and Yang San stood there and listened coldly. After listening to Chen Shuquan, he sighed softly. "Chen Shuquan, you've been in the Security Bureau for a long time, and your name is on the 6th Young Masters list. Do you know that your future is limitless? Do you know how many generations your descendants will be proud of having you as their ancestor? But now, because of your wrong decision, everything is gone. Yang San could not say whether he was lamenting or feeling pity for Chen Shuquan. He shook his head several times. It was obvious that this result made him a little sad. After all, it was not easy to cultivate a talent, and they had known each other for so many years. It was impossible to say that they had no feelings for each other. Now that he had made a mistake, a big mistake, it also meant the end of their friendship. It was no wonder that Yang San was a little sad. Yes, I know that I have done something wrong this time. I am willing to confess everything, and I am willing to testify. I only hope that the director will not implicate my family, and give me a quick death. Chen Shuquan could feel the sadness in Yang San's heart. How could he feel good in his heart? But since he had embarked on this path, there was no turning back. At this time, he could only use the last trace of the director's feelings for him to make his own request. Chapter 735. Cooperate well, I promise I won't implicate your family. Yang San knew what Chen Shuquan was worried about. Perhaps this was the only thing he could do for the other party. He patted the other party's shoulder lightly. Che Chao, I'll leave this to you. He will cooperate well with you and tell you everything we want to know. Director, don't worry, I'll get the confession immediately. Che Chao patted his chest and promised. There was a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. The chance to make a big contribution had come. As long as he did this well, he could get promoted as he wished and become the new director of the Crimson City Security Bureau. One was eager to make a contribution, the other was eager to atone for his sins. The two of them got together, and the process of taking notes and testimonies went very smoothly. In just half an hour, a clear file appeared in front of Yang San, who was in the duty room. After taking a quick look, Yang San sighed softly. Send someone to inform Yang Wu and the palace. It's time to reel in the net. Also, get the action team to move out. All the officials related to this matter must not be let off. Arrest them all. Yes, I'll do it immediately. Che Chao replied and turned to leave. This night, Crimson City was destined to not be peaceful. Palace. This palace occupied a large area and was built magnificently. It seemed to be an independent existence from Crimson City. Although the master was rarely here, no one dared to disrespect this place. So much so that anyone who walked out of this place could issue orders, and they all had a higher status than anyone else. Lin Lin, this woman with average looks and beauty was at most 30%, was one of the people who often went in and out of the palace. With her eloquence that could make a dead person come back to life, she gained the trust of the fifth Madame Su Maner and became the representative of the fifth Madame. Originally, Su Maner had a personal maid named Xiao Yun. However, this maid was a little lazy. In the end, the purchasing of the necessities of the palace fell to Lin Lin, who had been by Su Maner's side since she came to Crimson City. Lin Lin was a person who knew how to conduct herself. Not only did she know how to say nice things to make Su Maner laugh heartily, she also had a very good relationship with the other maids. In this regard, her husband, Yang Taizhu, was also very willing to spend money. With money, she could naturally bribe many people to do things for her. It was precisely because Lin Lin usually paid attention to the people around her that she was able to rope in more people. When the Yang mansion was surrounded, Yang Shan arranged for his trusted steward to leave through the secret passage in the mansion and come to the palace. Soon, a servant girl who had received favor handed the news to Lin Lin. Lin Lin, who suddenly received the news, was shocked. Although she didn't know what her husband, Yang Taizhu, did for a living, seeing how generous he usually was, she could guess that the money might not be so honorable. Because of this matter, she had hesitated and considered. However, when she thought of how his father was the dignified Minister of Foreign Affairs and was the person favored by the sixth young master, it was reasonable for such a family to have some unexpected wealth. She didn't think too much about it. However, now it seemed that the matter was a little serious. Once something happened to her husband, she would have no backing and no income. How could she unite more maids in the future? This would shake her foundation. She had no choice but to save him. Lin Lin decided to take action. However, before leaving the palace, she still had a very important thing to do. That was to first obtain the support of the fifth madam. Only in this way could she be considered to have the sword of the imperial court. Only then could she do things without fear. Is madam asleep? Lin Lin came to the room where Su Maner was resting and asked the maid on duty tonight. Not yet. Sister Lin, is something the matter? The maid on duty had a good relationship with Lin Lin and asked with a smile. I have a small matter to see madam. On the surface, Lin Lin acted as if nothing had happened. As she spoke, she had already walked into the bedroom. When she saw Su Maner sitting in front of the god's mirror removing her makeup, she knelt on the ground without another word. It was just an action without a word, but it gave Xiao Yun a fright. Su Maner, who was sitting there, also saw everything that happened behind her through the divine mirror. She was also shocked. Ling, what happened? Why do you have to be so respectful? It was just like how Yang Chendong asked his subordinates not to kneel for no reason. In the palace, unless it was an important occasion, there was no rule to kneel. Madam, please save Ling, Save the life of my husband's family. With a tear-stained face, Lin Lin looked like an excellent actress at this moment. She spoke as if she had been wronged. What's going on? Stand up and talk. Su Maner's expression became much more serious when she heard this. This maid who was very considerate of her was married to the son of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yang Shan. What exactly happened that even Minister Yang was unable to save her? Su Maner, who had already thought of the wording, started to distort the truth. She said that Minister Yang had long made people jealous because of his high position and power. She said that the Yang family had a relationship with Madame again, causing some people to be jealous. She said that it was not a matter of a day for everyone to overthrow Minister Yang and so on. In the end, Lin Lin said bluntly, Madam, the downfall of my husband's family is a small matter, but it will affect Madam's reputation. What's more, there will be people who want to take the opportunity to attack the sixth young master's prestige. This is a big matter. The sixth young master is not in the city all year round, and the development of the city is so prosperous. It's hard to tell what's in a person's heart. Su Maner did not pay much attention to the previous words. Even if it involved herself, she did not pay much attention to it. It was enough for her husband to know what kind of person she was. As for the opinions of others, she did not care at all. Because without her husband, she was probably a dead person now. It was hateful that she believed the one-sided words of a villain and even had delusions of killing her husband. Now that she thought about it, she really regretted it. All of this made Su Maner extremely grateful to Yang Chendong. She would not allow anyone to threaten her husband's safety, even if her reputation was damaged. Now that she heard that someone actually had such an idea, how could she not be angry? She glared and said, how preposterous. Is it true that because my husband is not around, some people want to indulge in wild fantasies? Yes, madam. This matter is not a small matter. Please make a decision. Seeing that Su Maner had fallen into a trap, Lin Lin was overjoyed and continued to instigate her. Lin Lin was asking what to do next. Should she help the Yang family? In this way, it would be equivalent to indirectly helping her. Su Maner understood the hidden meaning in his words. After thinking for a while, she said, then go and take a look. If they are trying to frame you, then let them investigate seriously. If they really did do it, then even you are not allowed to speak carelessly. Su Maner was still smart. She did not make a conclusion about things that she did not understand. Instead, she wanted to base it on facts. However, how could she know that the starting point of any matter might be good, but in the end, it depended on who was carrying it out. If the person carrying it out was someone who could not distinguish right from wrong, wanting to have a fair decision would become a delusion. Lin Lin was waiting for this sentence. She immediately agreed, stood up, and walked out of the bedroom. At this moment, she was no longer acting like a weak woman just now. Instead, she was filled with pride and confidence. Since you dare to go against my husband's family, then you can wait to be dealt with. After receiving Su Maner's support, Lin Lin seemed to have changed into a different person. When she walked out of the palace, her expression was filled with confidence. She wanted to use the name of a tiger. What could others do about it? Leading 4 maids, Lin Lin walked in front with large strides. Her arrogant appearance made her look like a master. Along the way, all the maids who met her stopped in their tracks from afar. When they got closer, they lowered their heads and asked questions with a fawning and respectful expression. From afar, she could see the outer gate of the palace. As long as she walked past it, she would reach the outer palace. Although there were many guards there in charge of security, with Lin Lin's status, they did not even have the courage to check. It could be said that once she passed through the gate, she would be free to fly. Lin Lin's face subconsciously revealed a victorious smile. However, at this moment, a light shout sounded behind her. "Are you Lin Lin?" "Wait a moment." Someone suddenly shouted her name behind her. Out of instinct, Lin Lin stopped in her tracks. When she turned around, she saw a group of people coming from afar. She recognized the leader. It was First Madam's personal maid, Xiao Qing. Beside Xiao Qing was the palace's head maid, Tai Jie. Sister Xiao Qing. After seeing that it was the young miss, Lin Lin immediately put away her arrogant expression and showed a very well-behaved appearance. She even intentionally bowed. This was the etiquette that only a servant would show to a master. It was no wonder that Lin Lin was so careful. Although she was valued by the 5th Madam and was considered a superior existence among the maids, she was still nothing in front of Xiao Qing. She was First Madam's favorite and had grown up with First Madam. Putting aside the fact that their relationship had been nurtured since they were young, Xiao Qing's husband, Sun Chuang, was already a battalion officer. Even the 6th young master had taken note of him. It could be said that his future was bright. Normally, such a person could open her own residence and be a mistress. However, she didn't. Instead, she stayed by the eldest madam's side and served her wholeheartedly. Just based on this, which maid in the palace didn't respect her? Which maid dared to give her a hard time? The sudden appearance of little Qing forced Lin Lin to stop her footsteps and stand there with a respectful expression. Chapter 736. Little Qing took small steps and soon arrived in front of Lin Lin. She first looked her up and down and then asked with a smile, "Little sister Lin Lin, it's so late. Where are you going?" If someone else asked her this question, Lin Lin could choose not to answer. They were all maids. One served the 1st Madam and the other served the 5th Madam. They usually minded their own business. But since it was little Qing who asked the question, Lin Lin had to answer, "It's like this. The 5th Madam has something for me to do. So I left the palace late at night." "I see. Since it's like this, you don't have to go. Go back and wait for the news." Little Qing nodded and then said slowly, "HM." Lin Lin was also confused by this sentence. She looked up and said to little Qing, "Sister Little Qing, I don't know if you didn't hear clearly. I went out this time on the 5th Madam's orders." I know. That's why I told you to go back and wait." Little Qing didn't wait for her to finish and stopped her. Then she turned her head and looked at the 8 maids behind her, especially the leader, Tai Jie, and said, "Listen well. Send little sister Little Qing and the others back. Don't wander around outside." After saying this casually, little Qing turned and left. She didn't even want to explain. The 8 maids behind her all stayed and stared at Lin Lin and the others. It seemed that if they didn't listen, then don't blame them for being rude. She was stopped. Even though it was little Qing who gave this order, Lin Lin was still a bit unconvinced. Although she could go back and ask 5th Madam again, it would inevitably delay time. Who knew if there would be any changes in the situation? So her eyes moved and she looked at the 8 maids surrounding her. She smiled and said, "Sisters, we're all maids and it's not easy for us. Why don't you make it easy? If you do me a favor, I will remember it in my heart." As she spoke, Lin Lin took out a stack of banknotes from her sleeves. The smallest banknote on the stack was worth 100 taels. She took out 800 taels. One had to say that Lin Lin was very generous. If it was any other time, the maids below would be beaming with joy and would say some words of blessings as they received the banknotes. However, it was a pity that this time, the trick that worked every single time did not work. The faces of the 8 maids didn't change at all. The leader, Tai Jie, acted as if she didn't see the banknotes and said, "Lin Lin, you'd better not make things difficult for us. Be obedient. Otherwise, once we start fighting, it will be really embarrassing." After getting the cold shoulder, Lin Lin's face became very ugly. She gritted her teeth and said, "Okay, then I'll go find the 5th madam. I don't believe that there's no justice in the palace." As she spoke, she turned around angrily and walked straight to the palace where the 5th madam was resting. At this time, Lin Lin didn't know that her backer, the 5th madam, had been invited to the 1st madam's palace. Not only Madame Wu, but Madame Shui, the 3rd madam, was also there. At this time, they were reading a telegram sent by Yang Chendong, which talked about some things about Yang Taizhu. Su Monair had just left when she received a message saying that the 1st madam had invited her. In the days when Yang Chendong was not around, the master of the palace was naturally the 1st madam, Hu Yan. Now that the 1st madam had given the order, not to mention that she had not yet rested, even if she had rested, she still had to get dressed and get up. Su Monair didn't dare to delay. With the help of the maid, Xiao Yun, she put on some light makeup and rushed to the 1st madam's palace with a group of maids. As soon as she entered the hall, she saw that Hu Yan and Madame Shui had already taken their seats. "5th sister, you're here. Come and sit." Seeing Su Monair appear, Hu Yan's face didn't have the slightest hint of anger or condemnation because she already knew that Lin Lin's actions were carried out behind Su Monair's back. In fact, this sister of hers didn't know anything. Su Monair really didn't know anything. Since the 1st madam called her, she naturally sat down. Then, she smiled and asked Hu Yan, "Sister, what happened?" Something must have happened for them to call her over so late at night. Su Monair's IQ wasn't low. She didn't think that the sisters would gather at this time just to chat about their daily lives. This time, before Hu Yan could speak, Madame Shui had already passed the telegram to her. "5th sister, you should take a look at this first." With a face full of doubt, Su Monair took the telegram from the maid, Xiao Yun. When her gaze fell on the contents of the telegram, Su Monair's expression quickly became a little ugly. Perhaps a telegram to others could be sent more simply, as long as the meaning was clear. But how could Yang Chendong be stingy with his words when sending a telegram to his wife? In this telegram, Yang Chendong explained everything very clearly. He even mentioned Lin Lin's name. Although some things couldn't be described in such detail like when they met, the mention of Lin Lin's name already explained a lot of things. While Su Monair was still digesting this news, Hu Yan had already opened her mouth and said, "This time, my husband is really angry. He risked his life at the front lines to fight for the world, working hard to save more Han people. But we still have to worry about our rear. Speaking of which, it's really our fault." It was a simple sentence, but Su Monair's expression froze when she heard it. She knew that she had really done something wrong this time. She had actually mistakenly trusted a maidservant and unknowingly passed on such a wrong signal to others, which had almost led to a disaster. Thinking that if it wasn't for her bad judgment, she wouldn't have made her husband worry about this. Su Monair felt waves of self-blame. Just as Su Monair was still accepting the condemnation in her heart, Xiao Yun suddenly entered the hall. She first greeted them and bowed. Then, she said, "Madam, 3rd madam, 5th madam, Sun Shuang of the Imperial Army has something to discuss with you. Your husband is here." "Let him in," Hu Yan said jokingly. Hu Yan said jokingly. From this point, it could be seen that she was not very angry. She, who had lived in the Hu family since she was young, was even more tired of hearing about all kinds of struggles. She had seen many servants doing bad things in the name of their master. It was precisely because of this that she didn't find it strange. Lin Lin was guilty, so she would be punished. As for fifth sister, after this incident, she should be more careful when using people. This was equivalent to having an effect. Xiao Yun, who was teased by her master, blushed. After agreeing, she went out to pass on the message. Soon, Sun Shuang, who had the rank of major, walked into the hall. He strode in, but once he entered the hall, he knelt on the ground without raising his head. He knew very well what kind of status the three people in front of him had. If he casually looked at them, it would be a sin. Sun Shuang of the Imperial Army greets First Madam, Third Madam, and Fifth Madam. A loud and clear voice sounded in the hall. Get up. What's the matter at this time of night? Hu Yan sat at the head of the table and asked in the manner of a host. Reporting to First Madam, news just came from the front. The matter of Yang Tieju's smuggling has been confirmed without a doubt. Not only that, his collaborator also said that there are a large number of weapons and armors in the Yang residence. This subordinate has come to temporarily close the palace gates in advance. Please allow me to do so. Sun Shuang's head was still lowered, but he did say a fact and result that the women did not expect. Are they going to rebel? When Hu Yan heard this, she was also shocked. It was common for subordinates to do some evil things in the name of their master, and it was also very difficult to truly prohibit it. However, the matter at hand involved military supplies, so the nature of the matter had changed. Among the three women, when Su Maner heard this, she was so scared that her face turned pale. Even the newspaper in her hand fell to the ground. At this moment, she finally knew what kind of end she had gotten for her nepotism. And it was her husband who had sensed all of this. If her husband had not seen through everything, what kind of result would there be? Would there be a day when someone would threaten the safety of the palace? If her two sisters were really hurt because of this, wouldn't she be guilty of the most heinous crimes? At this moment, Su Maner hated Lin Lin to the core. She had trusted her so much, but she had indeed used her name to help the evildoer. Something big had almost happened. It was truly unforgivable. Third Madam's expression also changed abruptly. Then, she looked at First Madam Hu Yan and said, Sister, the matter isn't that serious, right? Isn't Yang Wu at Yang Shan's place? He shouldn't give them a chance to resist. Isn't it better to be on guard? Hu Yan shook her head lightly. It was better to be safe than sorry. When she thought about how someone really threatened the safety of the palace, it was fine if something happened to her and the others, but she was afraid that it would cause her husband to go crazy. If that happened, many plans would be disrupted. This was the most terrible thing. Her husband was risking his life at the front. It was fine if they could not provide any help, but they definitely could not be a hindrance at the back. Thinking of this, Hu Yan said decisively, All right, we'll do as Battalion Commander Sun says. Seal the palace for now. If there aren't enough troops, you can deploy troops nearby. In a while, I will ask Xiao Yun to give you the token that my husband gave me. Yes, Sun Shuang understands. Sun Shuang left with large strides. Holding the token that Hu Yan gave him, he mobilized a cold front battalion to protect the palace. And inside the palace, the three madams also returned to their own palaces. Su Maner also returned, but her expression was not good. Thinking about what she had said before the three sisters separated, she would definitely give them an explanation. On the way back, she clenched her right fist several times, loosened it, and clenched it again. Chapter 737. Su Maner had been through a lot since she was young, and her willpower had long been tempered to be very firm. Otherwise, she would not have attempted to assassinate Yang Chendong. But recently, or rather, ever since she came to Crimson City, she was completely protected. Every day, there were people serving her in the palace. Over time, her wildness had been worn away, and she had become much purer. She originally thought that her life would be like this. One day, when she gave birth to a child for her husband, she would be happy for the rest of her life. But now, it seemed that conflicts were everywhere. If she was careless, she might be consigned to eternal damnation. Fortunately, her husband was reasonable and understood people's hearts. Her sisters were also kind-hearted and did not have the intention to blame her. If it was someone else, this matter would probably be enough to put her to death, and she would never be able to make a comeback. Since her husband understood her so well, then not only did she have to clean up the beginning and end of this matter, she also had to do some other things. She was lazy from staying in the palace every day. It was time for her to stretch her muscles and bones. As she thought about it, she returned to her palace. From afar, she saw Lin Lin, who had an aggrieved expression, walking over. "Madam, I wanted to leave the palace, but I was stopped by Xiao Qing." "How is she stopping me?" "She is clearly not giving you face, she." "Xiao Yun, take her down and slap her 30 times. Without waiting for Lin Lin to finish speaking, Su Maner's voice sounded. At this time, this woman was still trying to sow discord in front of her. Her intentions were truly hateful. Xiao Yun, who was at the side, did not know what had happened. She only knew that Madam's expression was not good after she returned. Now that there was an order, she did not dare to disobey. She brought 2 maids to Lin Lin's side, and a series of loud slapping sounds rang out. Lin Lin was still thinking that this time, she was ordered to leave the palace. This time, 5th Madam would definitely stand on her side. Who would have thought that there would be such an outcome? When the palm hit her face, she did not react. It was only after being slapped a few times that she became clear-headed and cried out that she had been wronged. At this time, Su Maner had already entered the inner chamber. Xiao Yun followed by the side with a face full of confusion and doubt. Su Maner trusted this maidservant who had followed her for many years. She didn't hide anything and told her the gist of the matter. Xiao Yun, who heard the truth, was also shocked. There's actually such a thing. Doesn't that mean Lin Lin is also one of the accomplices? Then, what are we? Yes, what are we? Su Maner repeated this sentence with a bitter smile on her face. Su Maner finally knew how much pressure this matter would bring her. Even if after this matter, her husband did not blame her, what would those maids in the palace think? What would those high officials in Crimson City think? It seemed that she had to do something. Xiao Yun, go and interrogate Lin Lin with Captain Tai later. I want to know what she did behind our backs. Su Maner bit her lips and said. Yes, ma'am. Xiao Yun also knew the importance of this matter and hurriedly agreed. However, she still had some doubts as she asked, what if Lin Lin doesn't say it? She has a lot of ideas. We can use any method. She won't keep it a secret. Oh right, doesn't she still have a father outside the palace who drinks every day? If she doesn't say it, then she will be harming her father. As Su Maner spoke, her eyes revealed a terrifying aura. People say that if you don't experience some things, you will never grow up and mature. And this time, Su Maner had obviously grown up a lot. Hearing that even her family was being threatened, Xiao Yun knew what to do. And with her father's threat, she was not afraid that Lin Lin would not say it. But what should she do after saying it? She had no choice but to ask, how should we deal with Lin Lin? Kill her. As long as she cooperates, you can tell her that her father can still live out his remaining years in peace. She seemed to have used the last bit of her strength to say this. Su Maner waved her hand at Xiao Yun, meaning that she was tired and needed a good rest. Xiao Yun left. But she did not know that Su Maner, who was in the bedroom, was not sleeping. Instead, she was thinking of a very big plan. A department that would eventually be comparable to the Security Bureau became a prototype that night. After reporting it to Yang Chendong, it was given a new name, the Central Intelligence Agency. And the boss of this Central Intelligence Agency was Su Maner. Its appearance would greatly make up for some of the negligence of the Security Bureau. In the future, it would make countless military achievements. This was probably something that even young Chendong did not foresee. After Lin Lin was slapped 30 times, she, who had a mouth full of blood, was dragged to the woodshed at the side. There, Xiaoyun set up a temporary torture chamber. Whether it was coercion or enticement, in the end, she found out everything she wanted to know. The result was still very gratifying. Lin Lin was only after Yang Tieju's family background and money. She did not really participate in what he did. This made Su Monair, who knew everything after the fact, heave a sigh of relief. She was guilty, but her sin was not that big. She could finally face Yang Chendong and her sisters. Lin Lin was finished. The father and son of the Yang family, who were still unaware of all this, still placed their hopes on him. After waiting for a long time, no one came. Instead, a secret agent from the Security Bureau came to the Yang residence. He came to Yang Wu's ear and whispered something softly. Yang Wu was originally standing there calmly, but after hearing the whispered news, his entire person became unwell. His eyes widened as he looked at Yang Shan and the captured Yang Taiju. Suddenly, he laughed out loud. Good, very good. I didn't expect that you were not only after money, but also have greater ambitions. Men, search. Turn the entire Yang residence upside down 3 times. Even a tile must be smashed into pieces. Absolutely not allow any item to remain intact. Yang Wu suddenly gave this ruthless order, and the Leng Feng soldiers who came with him agreed and began to move. Facing the ruthless Leng Feng warriors, Yang Shan wanted to stop them, but he realized that it was useless. He could not help but ask Yang Wu, Master Yang Wu, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? Why are you asking me about the good things you did? Yang Wu's face was overflowing with anger. He had just received news from Bureau Chief Yang San. Chen Shuquan said that once when he was drunk, Yang Taiju boasted that he had prepared some weapons and armor in his residence. If things changed, they could cause havoc in Reimen City and even threaten the safety of the palace in order to protect themselves. Once the news came out, Yang Wu could no longer remain calm. If such a thing really happened, then he had let down the young master's trust. In that case, even if he died, he would not be able to thank the world. Facing such a person, how could he still be courteous at this moment? Yang Wu was angry, so the Leng Feng warriors also began to act. The huge Yang residence was quickly turned over and many things were found. There were more than 4 million taels of gold and silver notes. This was equivalent to Bai Ming's or Nan Ming's annual income. After Yang Taiju started smuggling, he had earned so much in just a few times. This did not even include the huge expenses. From this, one could see how big the profits were. Other than the gold and silver, there were actually 2088 rifles, 300 sharp swords and spears, hundreds of sets of armor, and dozens of boxes of bullets and grenades. When these things were piled up like a small mountain in the courtyard of the Yang residence, Yang Shan finally lost his imposing manner and fell to the ground with a plop. At this moment, Yang Shan finally understood how big his son's ambition was. He also finally understood what it meant to raise a tiger for calamity. It was just that he was raising his son. The moment these things came out, Yang Taiju lowered his arrogant head. He knew that he was done for. On the other hand, Ling Song was sweating profusely. He didn't dare to imagine what would happen if these weapons suddenly launched an attack. Even if Crimson City did not fall into chaos, it would be difficult to protect some important institutions. Investigate, investigate, investigate for me. How did these things appear here? These are not things that can be bought with money. Yang Wu roared as he looked at the grenades and 88 rifles. Then, his gaze landed on Yang Shan. On behalf of the 6th young master, I announce that from now on, you are no longer the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Men, take him away and lock him in jail. Ma Dali will be the acting Minister of Foreign Affairs. You will also be in charge of the interrogation of Yang Shan. As Yang Shan's deputy, Ma Dali understood his superior very well. Letting someone who understood you to interrogate you would achieve twice the result with half the effort. Yang Wu did not doubt this point. The Yang family was finished. And that night, some people who had close ties with the Yang family were implicated. More than 50 officials were arrested. Among them were a few company cadres and a battalion commander from Cold Front. And this matter had only just begun. As the interrogation progressed, more and more people were implicated. Even the bureau's director general, Shin Yu, was invited away by the security bureau the next morning. The person in charge of the interrogation was none other than Director General Yang San. Using interrogation instead of interrogation meant that Yang San was under Yang Chendong's orders to reprimand Shin Yu. The gist of his words was that his job was very special. It was a job that offended others, but he did not have to be afraid of offending others because he had the sixth young master backing him up. He knew how hard it was for him and how he was a person. But if he was afraid of offending others, he could quit his job. He could go home and retire. He could also be given a leisurely department to pass the days. But in short, he had to do his job well as long as he was in office. Otherwise, he would not occupy this position. Facing Director General Yang San, who was under the orders of the Duke of Loyalty, Shin Yu did not dare be careless. He immediately nodded to express his understanding and promised that such a thing would not happen again. If he encountered any injustice or lawlessness, he would be the first to stand up. At the same time, he thanked the Duke of Loyalty for his trust in him. Chapter 738. People are like this. Once they are in a high position, they are not willing to give up their power. Shin Yu was like this. After experiencing the prestige of the Monitoring Bureau chief, he was reluctant to leave. Even if he knew that what he was about to do would offend a lot of people, he was still unwilling to leave. Since Shin Yu had already expressed his stance, Yang San also allowed him to make his choice. However, before they parted ways, he reminded him, "This matter is not over yet. There will be others who will come looking for you. You just have to wait. I hope that you can perform well." He did not say who was looking for him, nor did he say what it was about. Yang San left, leaving Shin Yu with a mystery in his heart. This mystery did not last long. Just as he was about to get off work, someone from the security bureau came to invite Shin Yu to the famous Min Le Fu restaurant in the city for a banquet. Shin Yu knew about Min Le Fu. Usually, many people with status were willing to hold their banquets there. He also heard that the background of the restaurant was very strong, but outsiders did not know the specifics. Since Yang San sent someone to inform him, and since he had already said hello, Shin Yu would naturally go. After getting off work, he went straight to Min Le Fu restaurant. When he arrived at the restaurant, which covered an area of more than 10,000 square meters, there were already people waiting for him outside. When they saw him arrive, they led him straight to the third floor. In the private room on the third floor, when Shin Yu opened the door and entered, he realized that he was not the first to arrive. The 1st Division Commander of the Navy, Gao Xiong, and the Political Department's Mo Qingyu had arrived before him. Gao Xiong was the commander of the Navy's 1st Division. It was said that the Duke of Loyalty wanted to expand the division into an army. If nothing unexpected happened, this person would become the first Navy commander. Ji Qingyu was one of the members of the Political Department. He was also the political commissar of the Army's 1st Division. There were already rumors that he would become the first vice minister of the Political Department. One of them represented the Navy's 1st Division, and the other represented the Army's 1st Division. Their arrival seemed to explain some things. When the three of them met, they naturally had to exchange greetings. However, their personal relationship wasn't very deep. This had to do with their identities and statuses, and also because they each represented different forces. It was impossible for them to sit together and drink and chat merrily. Where there are people, there are rivers and lakes. This sentence was also very appropriate to use here. Even though Yangtze hadn't been established for a long time, and many of them were newcomers, fighting seemed to be something that humans were born with. It was the kind that didn't need to be taught. You could learn it very well and play it very smoothly. Since there were benefits, there would be fights. When it came to who could get more and who could only get less, a struggle was inevitable. Yang Chendong couldn't do anything about this. Of course, this was something he was happy to see. The people below him were all as good as one person. This was not good for his management in the future. The private room was very spacious, at least 100 square meters. The three of them sat in 3 different directions, and soon, there was silence. Perhaps they were all wondering why Director Yang San had invited them here. What was he going to do? What kind of performance should they have? Just as the 3 of them were still immersed in their fantasies, the door suddenly opened and 2 people came in. When the 2 of them appeared, the 3 people in the room hurriedly stood up, their faces filled with respect from the bottom of their hearts. There was no other way. The people who came were the director of the security bureau, Yang San, and the future 6th Madam, Wan Xiaoyu. Yes, the one who came with Yang San was Wan Xiaoyu. Not only did she come, but she also walked in front. From this point alone, she should be the host of today's meal. Hello, Director Wan. Because Wan Xiaoyu also had the identity of Director of Publicity, before she was brought into the palace by Yang Chendong's legal wife, everyone was used to calling her Director Wan. Hello everyone, I've made you wait for a long time. I'm really sorry. I just came out from City Lord Yu's place. Wan Xiaoyu had a smile on her face. Although she was very young and was still a few years away from 18 years old, the long-term training had shown the results. She showed a very mature side. Even when she saw 3 people with great power, she didn't show the slightest bit of fear. Wan Xiaoyu was very clear in her heart. Who gave her everything today, and why the 3 people in front of her respected her. It was precisely because of this that after receiving Yang Chendong's telegram, she quickly returned to Crimson City from below. She began to carry out the following reforms, investigating the other movements. After the incident with Yang Chendong felt that it was always right to nip the problem in the bud. He couldn't always see the serious consequences before coming out to take care of everything. If that was the case, it would only cause unnecessary internal friction. After making this decision, he placed this heavy responsibility on Wan Xiaoyu. Yang Chendong knew that Wan Xiaoyu was still young, but this person was absolutely loyal to him. Her love for him was also the purest. He didn't have to worry about her betrayal. Moreover, as his woman, she should experience more storms. After all, he couldn't imagine what kind of achievements he would achieve in the future. If the women by his side were too ordinary, then it would really harm them. In the future, when Yang Dong entered the headquarters, he had watched some TV dramas when he had nothing to do. There were quite a few dramas in Guangdong-do. Although he didn't want that scene to happen to him, as his woman, she had to have the ability to protect herself. This was him helping Wan Xiaoyu grow up in advance. After accepting this mission, Wan Xiaoyu also knew that this was Dong Shuai's way of reminding her, so she made up her mind to perform better to prove herself. Thus, she came. Not only did she come, she even went to Yu Qian's office before coming. She chatted with this senior for a long time and decided on the direction of her work. The only regret was that Yu Qian did not accept Wan Xiaoyu's invitation. Even if it was Yang Chendong's intention, the result would be the same. In Yu Qian's words, his main job was still the development of Qiqian City. As for the other work, he would do his best to cooperate, but he would not delve too deeply into it. After all, a person's energy was limited. Yu Qian's rejection was actually for Wan Xiaoyu's sake. Because with his prestige, if he really participated in this matter, she would have nothing to do with it. When she really achieved results, her achievements would also be covered up. Thus, Wan Xiaoyu was grateful from the bottom of her heart for this senior's care and guidance. The moment she entered the private room, Wan Xiaoyu told everyone about her meeting with Yu Qian. This was equivalent to telling everyone that what she wanted to do not only obtained the consent and attention of the 6th young master, This could be seen from her own identity and the fact that Bureau Chief Yang Sen accompanied her throughout the entire process. She also obtained the full cooperation of the city lord, Yu Qian. The three people present were all extremely intelligent. They immediately understood what he meant, and the smiles on their faces widened a little. Since a matter had received so much support, there was no way they could refuse. Luan Xiaoyu walked into the private room, and after greeting the three of them, she did not immediately sit down. Instead, she walked to the window of the private room and looked out. At this time, the sky was already dark, but the street lights in Crimson City were already lit up. One could see commoners coming and going on the streets. It was very lively. Not far away, some of the nearby residential areas were also lit up with electric lights. Looking from afar, it really looked like tens of thousands of homes were lit up. According to Yang Chendong's intention, there was no curfew in Crimson City unless there were special circumstances. As time passed, not only were the commoners used to it, it was still very lively even at night. There were even some tea houses, restaurants, brothels, and casinos that had better business at night. This promoted the rich life of the entire city and promoted the economic development of this place. Yes, there were brothels and casinos in Crimson City. However, these industries were not something that everyone could do. They required a special industry certificate issued by the city lord's mansion, and the taxes were heavy. On this point, Yang Chendong was also clear that there were some things that could not be truly prohibited. Rather than letting others secretly hide and do it, it was better to openly take it out and standardize it. He could also collect more business taxes and use it to serve the army and the people. Wouldn't that be better? So lively. Looking out the window, Luan Xiaoyu could not help but say with emotion. Yes, so lively. This kind of scene can't be seen even in Baiming or Southernming's capital. Shen Yu also stood up and came to the window. Looking at everything in front of him, he also sighed with emotion. Such a lively place needs to be protected by us. Just based on this, we should all feel proud. Finally, Luan Xiaoyu's seemingly unintentional words began to lead to the main topic of today's conversation. Hearing this, Shen Yu and the other two's expressions turned cold. No one said anything. After all, Yang Tieju's matter had just happened. If everyone sang praises now, it would be too much of a bootlicker. The others did not say anything, only Luan Xiaoyu continued. Today, I called everyone here because of my idea, and also because of the sixth young master's idea. After Yang Tieju's matter, he even secretly hid weapons. This might be a special case, but at the same time, it also shows that we did not do our job well. There should be many people and departments involved in this matter, but we were completely unaware of it. In the end, we had to rely on the sixth young master to remind us what to do. Doesn't everyone feel ashamed because of this? Luan Xiaoyu's voice became louder and louder. At the end, there was a hint of reprimand in her voice. Chapter 739. She couldn't be blamed for being so angry. There were indeed quite a few people involved in this matter. Let's not talk about anything else, let's just talk about the weapons found in Yang Shan's residence. Let's not talk about the 2088 rifles for now. Just this one alone was enough to implicate a lot of people. What about the remaining swords and spears? Those were all products of the arsenal, far from the hoes and kitchen knives in the hands of ordinary people. They could be seen everywhere on the streets. These weapons were all made of iron, steel, and alloys. The production of every finished product was recorded. Not only that, so many weapons also required a lot of energy to be maintained daily. Otherwise, after a long time, the weapons would rust. In order to prevent this, not to mention wiping them frequently, they also needed to use vegetable oil. That was also a product of the military, and not something that ordinary people could buy with money. The weapons found in the Yang residence were all as shiny as new. It could be seen that they were usually maintained by people. Then the question was, who provided these materials? It was likely that many people would be implicated in the investigation. And these people sold the forbidden products to Yang Taizhu. Did they not think about the consequences and what would happen? There were also the 3 cargo ships and dozens of carriages of goods that were hijacked. It could be said that there were all kinds of things inside, such as divine realm, cosmetics, and women's clothes. Other than that, there were also things like cigarettes, ham sausages, canned food, and instant noodles. Many of them were only provided to the army and had not been circulated on the market. But now, they were all smuggled out. Could Yang Taizhu alone do all these things? It was obviously unreasonable. If this matter was thoroughly investigated, who knew how many people would be implicated? After saying so much, it was just to clarify one thing, and that was that there were probably many people involved in Yang Taizhu's matter, and even more people knew about it. But why did the higher-ups not make a move? Could it be that they did not know? That was absolutely impossible. If that was the case, these people would not be in high positions. In the end, there was only one possibility, and that was that too many people knew about it, but they dealt with it with the mentality that it was better to avoid trouble. Everyone had the idea of sweeping the snow in front of their own door. As long as they did not participate in some matters, it would not be wrong. With such a mentality, Yang Taizhu was able to do things like a fish in water, which made the problem become more serious. This time, if Yu Mian hadn't arrived at the origin city, met Yang Chendong, and voiced out his concerns, he was afraid that if he had waited for a while, once it erupted, it would have caused an unimaginable result. This was also the reason why Yang Chendong was so angry and wanted to investigate the source of his investigation. Luan Xiaoyu closed the window in front of her and the private room quickly fell into silence. Her voice was also clearly transmitted to the ears of the 4 people present. Let's talk business first. The dishes will be served later. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone, including Yang San, sat up straight and entered a state of semi-war. Luan Xiaoyu was very satisfied with everyone's attitude. She lightly nodded and casually said, "The 6th young master has ordered us to form a group of 5, which is the 5 of us. From today onwards, we will carry out a self-inspection for 3 months. Every local official, regardless of their position, was required to be thoroughly investigated. Every military officer up to the rank of a platoon in the army was also required to be investigated from head to toe. Once a problem is found, it must be verified immediately. If it is confirmed, what should be done is done. If there is no problem, they must be reassured and continue their work. If there is an outstanding person, they should be rewarded. Let's put it this way. The 6th young master has handed over the authority to deal with matters to the 5 of us. We have a great responsibility. Do you have confidence?" "Yes." At this moment, no one would raise a different opinion. This was the 6th young master's order. If anyone dared to stand out and say no, their future achievements would come to an end. Naturally, more importantly, this kind of self-inspection was very necessary. This was also a method to prevent something similar to Yang Taizhu from happening again. "All right." Seeing everyone's support, Luan Xiaoyu continued, "As for the specific details of the work, we will have to discuss it in detail later. The first thing we need to do now is to announce Yang Taizhu's case to the public. The investigation and evidence collection will be left to the Special Inspector Bureau and the Security Bureau. After everything is clarified, we will immediately hold a public trial in the city. We need to let everyone in the city know what is going on. Yes, our bureau will definitely cooperate fully. The Security Bureau will also cooperate fully." Yang San and Xin Yu quickly expressed their stance. "Very good." Luan Xiaoyu continued nodding. Then, a sly smile appeared in her eyes. Things have to be done one step at a time. Next, let's proceed with the first item, eating. He. The words eat eased the tense atmosphere. Even Yang San, who was usually reserved, chuckled at this moment. The 5-man team was established, and the self-inspection activities were in full swing. This would eventually affect all the departments. All the cadres and officers carried out their activities quickly and ruthlessly. On the first day, more than 40 cadres from various departments were taken away. Among them, 6 were military officers. On the second day, more than 50 were taken away. On the third day, more than 70 were taken away. On the fourth day, more than 90 were taken away. It wasn't until the fifth day that the number began to decrease. More than 60 people were taken away. Then, the number rose and fell. More and more cadres were taken away for questioning. Some of them couldn't come out after entering the 5-man team. These were all people with major problems. There were also some who were released a few days after entering, but they had already been demoted or even fired from their positions. They directly became ordinary citizens. There were also some who were released not long after and continued to shine brightly at work. There were even some who were directly promoted after coming out, replacing the position of a superior who had made a mistake. There were some who were promoted by 1, 2, or 3 ranks. This was a huge reshuffle. It had been about 5 years since Crimson City became Yangtze's headquarters. Many of them had benefited from this, and many of them had their lives changed. From having problems with food and drink in the past, they were now living a life of luxury. However, this still made some people unhappy. They felt that they should have received more. Even if Yang Qindong implemented a high salary policy, and their salaries were enough to cover their families' expenses, there were still some who couldn't help but reach out. In the face of such a greedy person, of course, Yang Qindong wouldn't be polite. This time, he checked again and eliminated all the black sheep with such thoughts. One could imagine that after this incident, the atmosphere of the entire Crimson City would change. In the future, the efficiency of work would also become faster and faster. The self-inspection activities were still ongoing, and many people's fates had changed. Some who benefited from their work were promoted, while some who were greedy received their deserved retribution. At this moment, Yang Qindong sent another telegram to Wan Xiaoyu. A new policy to raise the treatment of officials had been implemented, and that was the special ticketing system. The so-called special ticketing system was similar to the planned economy in the early days of the Republic, where the citizens would be given food stamps to purchase meat and grains. Yang Qindong requested for the officials to be given a certain percentage of their monthly salary. Once they had such ticketing, they would have priority to purchase some sought-after goods in the market. For example, cigarettes, all sorts of beverages, bottles of strong liquor, magical mirrors, high-grade cosmetics, and beautiful women's clothing. For this, Yang Qindong requested for a store to be set up in Crimson City. This store had a complete range of goods, and the quantity was sufficient. However, there was a difference, and that was that everything had to be purchased with special ticketing systems. Here, silver and even gold were useless. The reason for such a decision was that there were too many officials in the 5-man investigation team. In addition, the momentum was very large, which caused many people to feel fear. There were actually not enough officials to go around. In order to make more capable people work for him, Yang Qindong decided to give them some benefits. Under such temptation, he was not afraid that some people would not be loyal to him. It had to be said that when the special ticketing system appeared, the ticketing systems in the hands of the officials became popular goods. Although there were a lot of factories in Crimson City, and a lot of good things, because there were too many merchants outside, the supply could not meet the demand. As a result, even in Crimson City, some items were difficult to buy. With the special ticketing system in the store, those good things that could not be bought outside were actually available here. The ticketing system became a hard currency, and some of the rich people started to have ideas about the ticketing systems in the hands of the officials. The officials were also humans, and they also wanted to live a better life. The ticketing systems in their hands were not enough for their own use, so how could they sell them? Even if some people wanted to sell a portion of it for some reason, it was difficult to satisfy the needs of more rich people. Over time, some people had no choice but to give up on buying it and think of ways to become officials themselves. Yang Qindong's move caused the number of people who applied for the official exam to increase by a lot, greatly alleviating the pressure and fear brought to everyone by the 5-man team. Crimson City finally continued to move forward amidst the wind and rain. After many new officials took up their positions, the effects in all aspects were indeed much faster than before. Just from this point alone, it seemed that the previous efforts were worth it. Just as the 5 young misses were carrying out their operation with great momentum, Sumaner was not idle either. She left the palace several times to look for good seedlings in the CIA. Her request was a little strange. She requested for all of them to be women because she believed that some things were more convenient for women to do than men. Chapter 740. After obtaining Yang Chendong's approval and support, Sumaner not only received a large amount of funds for her activities, but she was also allowed to enter the refugee camp in Crimson City to find suitable seedlings among the 5 million people who made the deal with the Southern Ming Empire. Under such generous conditions, girls and women were chosen by Sumaner one after another. They became the first batch of important personnel in the CIA and became the cornerstone of the CIA's development. In this incident, many people were also caught in the crossfire because they did not perform their duties properly. There were many people in the military and the local government. However, at the same time, the working environment became more pure. Even the relationship between the military and the political department was eased to a certain extent. Leng Song's name was not in the 5-man team. Although he was the political commissar of the 1st Division, Mo Qingyu, and it looked the same, only he knew that it was because he was the main force in the confrontation between the military and the political department. There was also a period of time when he was very close to Yang Shanjia. This was clearly a warning from the 6th young master to him. From the moment the 5-man team was formed, the smart Leng Song immediately changed his strategy. He no longer resisted the work of the political department. Instead, he cooperated with it. This also allowed the military's work to be greatly improved. When the news reached Yang Chendong's ears in the first city, he smiled and was very satisfied. If a force wanted to develop, it was just like life. It would always encounter problems. The key was the kind of mentality one had to solve the problem and not blindly escape and endure. Only by cutting off one's wrist would there be a new life. Otherwise, even if one was still alive, one would not be a healthy person. The matter of Crimson City had returned to the right path. In the process of returning, there would definitely be some pain. Some people and old friends would also be cut off from fate. However, the path that should be taken still had to be taken. The development of the first city was also imminent. These days, Yang Chendong not only had his eyes on Crimson City, but also sent a few telegrams to understand the situation. The development and construction of the first city were not lagging behind. These days, Yu Mian woke up early and slept late every day. He finally understood the situation in the city and had a general guideline for what to do next. Today, he took the initiative to come to the city lord's mansion to report to Yang Chendong. He was told that the 6th young master was inspecting the work in the logistics department. The so-called logistics department was just a general term. Because the first city was not as complete as the Crimson City, many of the supplies transported from outside were piled up in the logistics department. Today, Yang Chendong came here to inquire about the situation of the supplies. In addition, he came to see the situation of the soldiers receiving the new weapons here, the Big Dipper crossbow, also known as Big Dipper steel crossbow. The so-called Big Dipper crossbow was a new type of crossbow made of pure steel. Unlike the traditional ones, it was more pocket-sized. However, being short didn't mean that it wasn't powerful. On the contrary, because the spring was strong enough, it could shoot a distance of 100 meters. This kind of Big Dipper crossbow could be tied to the arm and shot at the enemy. More importantly, it was equipped with a mechanism that allowed it to fire 7 arrows at once. This greatly increased its lethality and increased its chances of victory on the battlefield. With the current ability of the Crimson City munitions factory, it wasn't a problem to create a Type 81 assault rifle. However, it would still take a lot of time to create a qualified Type 95 assault rifle. How to save the use of the Type 95 assault rifle and what weapon to use to replace it was the problem that the people of the Crimson City munitions factory had to think about and face during this period of time. Someone suggested that if it didn't work, the Cold Front Army should use the Type 81 assault rifle again. However, this idea was quickly rejected. Not to mention that with the current factory ability of the munitions factory, the number of Type 81 assault rifles that they could create was limited and could not be provided to all the Cold Front Army soldiers. Just by giving up on the Type 95 assault rifle, once that person became used to it, the research and development work would only be slower. Then, no one knew when they could create the real Type 95 assault rifle. The people of the munitions factory also needed to be stressed. This debate was finally reported to Yang Chendong in the form of a telegram. He waved his pen and gave the final decision. The development of the Type 95 assault rifle could not be stopped. They could also increase the number of people and funds. For the time being, they could find a weapon to replace the Type 95 assault rifle as a transitional product. Under such a decree, the Big Dipper crossbow appeared. How is it? How's the accuracy? In the logistics team, Yang Chendong looked at the 3rd Division's division commander Wu Sheng and political commissar Chen Bo, who came to collect the equipment, and asked with a smile. Reporting to the 6th young master, the Big Dipper crossbow is very good. Chen Bo immediately stood at attention and said respectfully. The crossbow can shoot continuously, which is equivalent to shooting continuously. Moreover, the size of the crossbow is smaller, so more of them can be carried on the body. After training, the accuracy can also be improved. However, the shooting distance is too short, only 100 meters. The 3rd Division's division commander Wu Xing also gave his evaluation. In the end, he pointed out the shortcomings and expressed his dissatisfaction. Alright, this is just a crossbow. Even if it can shoot continuously, it's still a crossbow. How far do you want to shoot? Moreover, when the enemy is far away, you can still use the Type 95 assault rifle. Yang Chendong patted Wu Xing's shoulder and warned others to be content with what they had. Although the Type 95 assault rifle was used for a long time, there would be some wear and tear and damage. However, with the efforts of Wu Hua and the other blacksmiths, as long as the damage wasn't too severe, simple repairs could still be done. If it really didn't work, Yang Chendong could just use the big warehouse. The Type 95 assault rifle was stored in boxes and boxes. If it wasn't for the fact that he wanted to give enough pressure to the Crimson City arsenal, he wouldn't have thought of using a weapon like the Big Dipper crossbow. Of course, Yang Chendong's actions were also a display of confidence. The current Langfang's Division 3 division, even if they didn't have guns, their battle strength was still very strong. This kind of army was what he needed. Normally, they would use cold weapons. Against strong enemies, they would use guns. With this combination, the Langfeng division would definitely become the strongest army in the world. Only then would they have the strength to conquer more places and territories. Wu Xing also knew that his expectations were a little too high, so he chuckled and nodded. 6th young master, please be at ease. The 3 of us have been diligently training. Even if we use the same weapons as our opponents, we will still be able to win. Yes, that's what I want. Yang Chendong laughed, showing that he was in a good mood. Young master, City Lord Yu Mian is here. While Yang Chendong was still chatting and commenting on the Big Dipper crossbow with the officers of the 3 divisions, Beta Persei walked to Yang Chendong's side and reported. Okay, I'll go take a look. Motioning for Wu Sheng, Chen Bo, and the others to continue working, Yang Chendong turned around and walked out of the logistics group's gate under the protection of a group of guards. He saw Yu Mian waiting there. When he saw Yang Chendong, the first thing he said was, 6th young master, I want a farm near the first city. Farm? Yang Chendong looked at Yu Mian in a daze and became interested. Continue. Seeing that Yang Chendong did not object to him immediately, Yu Mian knew that his idea should be feasible. He immediately said, 6th young master, I've already investigated. The reason why the people here are very poor and sometimes even have problems eating is not because they are not hardworking, nor is it because the soil here is not good. Although it's called yellow soil, as long as you plant properly, you can still grow good crops. They don't dare to plant because safety has always been a problem. The Mongols lived by herding. This was a way of life left behind by their ancestors. It was also because it was more flexible. On the grassland, the strong preyed on the weak. The strong would always be able to obtain more resources. Imagine, what kind of strength did an ordinary person have? If he chose to farm, it would be equivalent to imprisoning himself in a certain area. Usually, it was fine, but once he encountered an enemy attack and danger came, he could drive the flock of sheep away. However, he could not take the crops planted on the ground with him. That would only benefit the invading enemy. As time passed, no one thought about farming anymore. On this point, Yu Mian had talked to many people in the city, including many Han people. They did indeed live by farming, and when they first came to the grassland, they were not used to it. However, because there was no safe place, they could only give up on the idea of farming and being self-sufficient. Now, with the appearance of the mercenaries and their strength, they had become some sort of guarantee, allowing some people to see hope again. Thus, they made this request. After Yu Mian investigated for a while, he also felt that this matter was feasible. Thus, he came to find Yang Qindong and proposed his idea. Yes, it's farming. I've thought about it. Not only can he solve the problem of food for the army on the spot, once the people have land, they will also have a strong sense of belonging. This way, they will be able to gather people's hearts faster and make the first city prosperous and prosperous. Yu Mian said excitedly. Yes, this is a good idea. However, it's already August now. In addition to the cold winter here, I'm afraid it's too late this year. Yang Qindong nodded and began to analyze the reality of the matter from the actual operation. Yes, it's too late this year. In fact, we don't have the seeds of the crops. All of this needs time to prepare. I've already thought about it. We can contact Crimson City now and ask them to provide more seeds. We can wait for them to be delivered in spring next year. As for now, we can first open up the fertile land, measure it, and distribute it to the citizens who are already in the first city. This way, they will have hope, and the first city can also attract more people to come and seek refuge. Yu Mian still said with an excited face. From this point, it could be seen that he had indeed put in some effort. Yang Qindong did not answer immediately. Instead, he nodded after thinking carefully. I think it's possible. Then you can go ahead and do it. This way, we can open up the fertile land and tell the people that they don't have to worry about their safety. As long as the mercenaries are here, they will protect their fruits of victory. When the enemy comes, we can just beat them away. Chapter 741. Yang Qindong suddenly thought of using greenhouses to grow crops. However, since he did not have any fertile land and had not made the necessary preparations, he decided to let Crimson City prepare the greenhouses. Before these things arrived, there was no need to inform Yu Mian. Yu Mian did not know what Yang Qindong was thinking, but he was waiting for these words. On the prairie, without sufficient strength, one would not dare to do anything. Now that he had the protection of Yang Qindong and the army, he was overjoyed. Yes, sixth young master, please wait for the good news next year. Yu Mian left happily, leaving Yang Qindong behind to mutter in his heart, looks like there's a need to use force to intimidate others. If you want others to be afraid of you, then you have to learn how to show your fist and let others know how developed your muscles are and how powerful you are. Just as Yang Qindong was thinking about who to find as his opponent, an opportunity came knocking on his door. That night, the director of the First City Security Bureau, Feng Liang, came to visit. He brought with him news that someone was investigating the situation in the First City and was even trying to instigate a rebellion among the commoners in the city. Coincidentally, the mercenary army had won the battle and defeated the 50,000 cavalry led by Agador, allowing many of the commoners in the city to see hope. Some of the young and strong among them wanted to join the army. While contributing their strength, they also wanted to fight for a future for themselves. However, because there were too many captives from the battlefield and the mercenary army's food and fodder were all supplied from the outside, the number of troops had already reached a limit and could not be increased anymore. Thus, they did not choose to expand the army, and the young and strong people in the city naturally did not have the chance to join the mercenary army. At that time, it just so happened that Feng Liang was dealing with this matter. Due to various considerations, he gathered a few good young seedlings together and established a militia system, allowing them to be responsible for some of the security in the city. It was impossible to give them food, but they could still be given some silver every month. It was precisely this action that caused many people from the security bureau to appear in the city. And this time, it was these people who had contributed. They discovered that there were outsiders who had entered the city and were still contacting the commoners. They felt that something was wrong, so they took the initiative to contact them. In the end, they found out that the other party's identity and purpose were actually trying to persuade the commoners to rebel. This was tantamount to breaking the stable life they had painstakingly obtained. How could these secret agents agree? They immediately took the man and sent him to Feng Liang. Who is it? And who does it represent? There was not the slightest bit of nervousness on Yang Chendong's face. He had been looking for someone to show off his muscles, and now that someone had come knocking on his door, he had no reason to be unhappy. The sixth young master. Feng, of course, from the Golden Family, the Mongol, the Golden Horde. The Golden Family? Yang Chendong nodded thoughtfully. After the death of Genghis Khan, only his direct descendants, namely the descendants of Jochi, Chagatai, Ogidi, and Talyui, were known as the Golden Family and qualified to inherit the throne of the Khans. After Talyui's son, Monk, became the great Khan of the Mongol, the range was further narrowed down to the descendants of Talyui. Later, the Yuan dynasty emperors and the Ming dynasty Tatar Khans, such as Dayan Khan, were all from this line. The descendants of Genghis Khan established 4 khanates, namely the Golden Horde, also known as the Kipchak Khanate, the Chagatai Khanate, the Ogidi Khanate and the Ilkhanate. The Golden Horde was the territory of Genghis Khan's eldest son, Jochi, and grandson, Zibadu. Because they were the descendants of Genghis Khan, they were called the Golden Family by the Mongols. They had great influence in the entire grassland. The Golden Horde was now the most powerful branch of the Golden Family. Until now, they had occupied and ruled Russia, which spanned across the Eurasian continent, for more than 200 years. Yes, they are from the Golden Family. This Wuxia relied on this relationship and was very arrogant. Even if he was captured, he did not have any intention of lowering his head. Feng Liang nodded and reported. He did not dare not to report anything that was related to the Golden Family. After all, this family represented the Orthodox and had great influence on the grassland. For example, the leader of the Walla, Yes Hen, was originally a strong military commander. He was also quite capable and ruled a strong grassland army. But why did he disappear in the end? After all, he was not a member of the Golden Family. His force was also seen as a rebel army by the Mongols and was not orthodox. It was possible to be strong for a short period of time, but after a long period of time, everyone would ostracize you. If you still wanted to be king, you would be digging your own grave. Now that Yang Chendong was about to face the Golden Family, it was inevitable that he would have to think more about it. Feng Liang stood there and did not say anything. He was waiting for the 6th young master's decision. If the 6th young master was not afraid of the other party, then of course, he would teach the other party a lesson. If he had some concerns, then he would let the other party go. Sometimes, showing weakness did not mean that one was really weak. It was just a preparation to be stronger. This kind of waiting did not take long. Yang Chendong said, "Interrogate this person carefully. The Golden Horde is thousands of miles away. We have to find out how this person came to the first city so quickly. Interrogate him carefully. I am afraid he will not speak casually." Feng Liang said with some difficulty. If he does not speak, then you will use tricks. Don't say that the Security Bureau has no way to deal with him. In short, find out all the details about him and learn more about the Golden Horde. If the conditions are right, we will choose to take the initiative to attack. Yang Chendong looked at Feng Liang with a faint smile. When he said this, Feng Liang was shocked. He did not expect that the sixth young master was not afraid of the Golden Horde and even wanted to attack the Golden Horde. In this case, he certainly knew what to do. He immediately stood at attention, saluted and said confidently, "Sixth young master, please rest assured. I will definitely find out if he wet the bed when he was young." Since Yang Chendong had made up his mind, Feng Liang did not have any worries. When he returned to the security bureau's prison, the one who would suffer would be Wuxia. Relying on his background of the Golden Horde, Wuxia was used to being arrogant. Wherever he went, who would not give him some face? This was also the reason why he dared to go against Feng Liang. This was also the reason why he dared to openly collude with the people in the city to oppose the mercenaries. According to Wuxia, with his identity, even if he attracted the attention of the mercenaries, they would not dare to do anything to him. Didn't the Han people say that envoys would not be killed when two armies fought? Moreover, he was a member of the Golden Horde. But what he did not expect was that Feng Liang, who was very polite before, suddenly showed his fangs and tested all kinds of torture on him. Wuxia, who was used to being arrogant wherever he went, could not endure such pain. Even if his name was translated into Chinese, it meant loyalty. But at this moment, when faced with torture, he chose not to be loyal and told everything he knew. Just as Yang Chendong thought, Wuxia did not come from the Golden Horde. Time did not allow for it. The reason why he appeared in the beginning city in such a short time was that he came from the Gobi Mongol. As a member of the Golden Horde, Wuxia did not allow others to establish a strong force on the grassland. Anyone who dared to do so would be regarded as a provocation to the Golden Horde. So, he stood up and came to the beginning city. After getting all the information he wanted, Feng Liang reappeared in the city lord's mansion early the next morning. With a pair of slightly bloodshot eyes, he reported the situation to Yang Chendong. Gobi Mongol? They really don't learn from their mistakes. Yang Chendong couldn't help but think of Tuoya's appearance in his mind, especially the pair of magnificent big breasts. It was really difficult for people to forget after seeing it. Yes, it's the Gobi Mongol. According to Wuxia, after he arrived there, he was warmly received by Khan Sud. Soon after, he heard about our beginning city, and then he volunteered to come. Feng Liang also smiled. He had a feeling that the sixth young master would not let the Gobi Mongol go easily this time. His feeling was soon confirmed. Yang Chendong narrowed his eyes and said, "Very well, after all, we have to show off our muscles. Then we'll choose them." Yang Chendong was determined to send troops to the Gobi Mongol. Wuxia's matter was just an excuse. He wanted to use this matter to warn some of the surrounding forces how powerful the mercenaries were. They'd better not have any ideas about it. Otherwise, the person who would die would be you, not me. He was determined to take action. Soon, all kinds of information about the Gobi Mongol were sent to Yang Chendong like snowflakes. The Gobi Mongol was distributed in the Mongol Empire, which was the Khalkha tribe. According to the information obtained, this tribe had about 600,000 soldiers, and its power was not small. However, because the area was too large, their power could not be concentrated at all. Every time they fought with outsiders, the number of troops they could mobilize became very limited. 600,000? It does have some momentum. After glancing at the number casually, Yang Chendong threw it aside. The so-called 600,000 was not in his eyes at all. After careful analysis, this number was really not a big deal. Other than the old people, children, and women, it was not bad if about 1/5 of the young people who could really ride horses and fight. There were only 120,000 of them, and they were spread out too thinly. They could only face tens of thousands of cavalrymen at most. Even Agador's 50,000 cavalrymen had been defeated, so there was no reason for them not to be able to defeat them. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.